Chapter 127. That person frowned and tilted his head in dissatisfaction. It was obvious that he was extremely dissatisfied in his heart. Anyone could understand that he was fishing quietly here for a while, but King threw rocks at him as soon as you came. Not only did you scare the fish away, even my leisurely fishing was ruined by you. You actually King built a platform. Why don't you go to heaven? Why don't you just build a house here? This is the best way to burn a zither and cook a crane. Alright. You're finally done. You actually placed a chair on the stone platform? The man was truly shocked now. CK, are you trying to fish here? His eyes widened as he watched the unbelievable and unimaginable events unfold one after another. The person in charge seemed to be a rich young master, the kind that did not even have the strength to truss a chicken. No, this fellow was severely injured. He actually came to fish with such a heavy injury. Everything was done by the person behind him. She set up a table for him, set up a chair for him, and even made a backrest for him. She set up a fishing rod, a fishing line, a hook, and a float for him. He had even brought a small blanket. Are you going to help him fish again later? I say. Isn't this done? Still causing trouble? Plop, plop, plop. It was as if he wanted to smash all the fish in the lake to death as he threw bait in. After a while, he suddenly turned to smile at him and said, I'm so sorry for scaring all your fish away just now. I'll make a nest for you as well. Plop, plop, plop. He continued to throw bait at him for a long time. The fisherman was completely dumbfounded, tongue-tied and speechless. He was speechless for a long while. Even with his years of experience, he was still at a loss for what to do with the bizarre development before him. He could not help scratching his head. As he stretched his hand out, Yunyang could sensitively see that the man's head was mostly covered in grayish-white hair. He did not know how high his cultivation base was, but it seemed like he was not young anymore. When Yunyang finally sat down leisurely, at least an hour had passed. What a farce. However, the farce did not seem to have ended. It was only just the beginning because the elder saw Yunyang sitting calmly. He did not even have the intention to extend his fishing rod. He was only holding the bait, pinching it here and there. What was he up to this time? Cough. The old man coughed and asked doubtfully, Young master, you've spent a lot of effort to arrange the positions. You've even placed the bait everywhere. Why aren't you pulling the rod? Yunyang replied with a smile, I frightened the fish just now. Most of them won't dare to come over now. There's bait on the left and right as bait. As long as I wait quietly for a while, the fish will be lured over. Of course, I'll drop the rod after some time. The old man laughed involuntarily. Then I'm afraid that young master will have to wait for a long time. Based on my experience, after such a big commotion, there will be some palm-sized fishes coming over within 2 hours. The bigger fishes will definitely not come over. If you want to catch a big fish, you will have to wait at least 6 hours. Yunyang sat down comfortably and leaned against the back of the chair, saying faintly, as long as I can catch a big fish, forget 6 hours, I can even wait for 3 days and 3 nights. Yunyang smiled. Patience is needed to catch a big fish. Old sir, don't be impatient. Not only did the elder's plan to mock Yunyang fail, he had been taught a lesson instead. He choked for a moment. He sat down in a huff and shut his mouth, not saying another word. Initially, he wanted to get rid of this fellow with just a few words so that he could regain his peace. He didn't expect that this fellow would actually talk for 3 days and 3 nights. Alright, he wanted to see if this rich young master who always asked others to do his dirty work really had that much patience. However, his silence did not mean that Yunyang would not speak either. Old sir, where did you buy this straw cape? It looks like it's not bad. As long as you wear it, you won't have to be afraid of wind, frost, rain, and snow. And this bamboo hat, it can cover the entire lake. The elder snorted but did not answer. If only there was a bamboo hat to cover this huge sun. Yunyang sighed, sounding like he was sighing. The elder still did not speak. May I ask old sir's name? Yunyang asked. The elder was completely focused on the float, turning a deaf ear to Yunyang. Old sir, how old are you? Yunyang asked again. The elder's gaze was still fixed on the float, not saying a word. Yunyang scratched his head and suddenly fished out a rock the size of a human head from beside him, throwing it with a hat. Poof! Water splashed into the sky. It landed right in front of the elder's fishing rod. A single rock raised 1,000 ripples. The surface of the lake that had finally calmed down was stirred again. After this rock, it would be a long time before any fish would come here again. The elder stood up at once and said angrily, Young master, how can you be so insensible? Aren't you causing trouble? Yunyang asked with a grin, May I ask old sir's name? The elder huffed angrily. This old man is going somewhere else, not here anymore. He stood up and made to leave. Old Fong, let's not stay here either. This old sir seems to be an expert. How can we miss an expert? Let's follow him. Wherever he goes we'll follow. We can't lose him. Yun Yang called out to Fong Mafei and stood up as well. The elder was speechless. He let out a long sigh towards the sky. He could not help but feel around his back and actually took out a huge wine gourd. Twisting the lid open, he took a huge gulp and glared at Yun Yang. This is infuriating. Old sir, don't be angry. Don't be angry. Yun Yang said gently, you're already so old. What if something bad happens to you? Wouldn't it be a pity that this place is so deserted? What if something happens to you? This time, not only did the elder almost pass out from anger, even Fong Mafei was speechless. Until now, he still could not figure out what Yun Yang meant by causing trouble like this. Wasn't he simply making trouble out of nothing? Young master, are you still young? Was it really appropriate to do this? Yun Yang looked at the huge wine gourd, a strange look in his eyes as he said softly, Old sir, this wine is not bad. The old man snorted and rolled his eyes, hugging the wine gourd. This child actually wants to drink my wine? Is he thinking too much? The old man snorted and wiped his mouth before putting the wine gourd back, still unwilling to talk to a certain someone. Old Fong, where's our wine? Yun Yang turned to ask. The corners of Fong Mafei's lips twitched. Immediately. A moment later. A table was placed in front of Yun Yang. Then 10 piping hot side dishes were placed on the table one by one. 2 wine glasses, sparkling and translucent. A pot of wine was placed on the edge of the table. However, one could tell at a glance that this wine pot was obviously an antique that had been around for a long time. Even the sticker on it was almost unrecognizable. From the outside to the inside, it was obvious that the pot was old wine, a fine wine that had been around for a long time. The old man, who was holding the fishing rod, glanced at the pot of wine unintentionally and actually paused for a moment. His eyes, which were covered by the bamboo hat, could not help but stare blankly. Speaking of wine, there have been countless brewmasters in this world for thousands of years. There are also a variety of wines that compete with each other, each with their own ingenuity. Yun Yang said slowly, however, to this day, there is only the god of wine from 330 years ago, Feng Xiang'e, who can be acknowledged by the entire continent as a brewmaster. As he spoke, even the old man who had been indifferent could not help but nod slowly. Indeed, Feng Xiang'e's achievements in the field of wine were undeniable. As an expert of his generation, Feng Xiang'e stood aloof from worldly affairs all his life. From the age of 30 to the age of 279, which was 20 years ago when he went missing, he had only devoted himself to 2 things in his life. One was medicine and the other was wine. Back then, the martial world called him the phantom physician god of wine. His medical skills were superb as well, but his medical methods were unconventional, which was why he was called Phantom. However, let's not talk about his medical skills today, let's talk about his wine. The number of wines he had personally brewed in his lifetime was uncountable. However, there were very few wines that could be recognized by him, and there were only 7 in total. He called these 7 wines the Big Dipper wine. The old man sat aside with a hint of mockery on his face under the bamboo hat. What do you know? Feng Xiang'e has better and more highly regarded wines. Yun Yang said faintly, however, not many people know that this so-called Big Dipper wine is only a wine that Feng Xiang'e has promoted to the public. Although each of the Big Dipper wine is already a premium brew, it's still not at the level of a superior quality. Actually, the 3 wines that Feng Xiang'e treasured the most were the wines he used to entertain his friends. They were divided into the heaven, earth, and man wines. He used them to entertain his friends based on their friendship, cultivation base, past, and experiences. The old man heaved a long sigh of relief, thinking, this child actually knows such a story. How remarkable. Yun Yang said, these 3 wines are considered superior, but they're still not the premium wines that Feng Xiang'e admired the most. The premium wines that he kept in his collection, the best wines in the entire Tianshan continent, aren't these heaven, earth, and man wines, but the prime of wines. The ingredients used to brew the so-called prime of wines are already extremely rare. Feng Xiang'e had collected countless rare and precious materials from the peaks and seabed of Tianan northwest, and sea to brew them. He had only brewed 99 pots in his lifetime. When the wine was brewed, it was sealed without tasting it, difficult to open. Even Feng Xiang'e himself could hardly drink it. However, when he was 230 years old, he only drank this one wine when he drank. To Feng Xiang'e then, There was no other wine in this world that could go down his throat other than this prime of wines. When he disappeared, there were only 9 pots of this famous but untasted prime of wines left. They were sold out the moment they were discovered. In the end, only 6 pots entered the market and were auctioned many times. According to the highest price, it seemed to be 3,000 mystical crystals. Yun-yang spoke slowly. There seemed to be a strange charm in his voice. 3,000 mystical crystals. On the other side, the old man wearing the bamboo hat looked up at the sky, his heart filled with regret. I got the news of the auction back then too late. Otherwise, one of the 6 pots of wine would have been mine. Chapter 128. To this day, the 6 pots of wine that had entered the market have been hidden by wine lovers and are rarely seen again. As for the other 3 pots of wine, no one knows of their whereabouts. However, one day when the empire of Yutong's Marquis Yun went out, he saved someone by accident and became best friends with the person. When they parted reluctantly, the person gave Marquis Yun a pot of wine. Coincidentally, it was the prime of wine. Back then, it had been 112 years since Feng Xiang'e brewed this pot of wine. Yun-yang smiled. The old man could not hold it in any longer and said loudly, "What are you trying to say after spouting so much nonsense? Could it be that this wine of yours is the prime of wine? What a joke." Yun-yang smiled. "It looks like old sir is not from Tiantang City. So what?" The old man's tone was irascible. "If you were from Tiantang City, you would know that the Marquis of Heavenly Clouds, who terrorized the world with his sword, has an only young master. His name is Yun-yang." Yun-yang said, "This young master Yun-yang is born with rosy lips and pearly white teeth. He is handsome and elegant, with a dignified demeanor. He is one of the most handsome men in this world. Perhaps, it could be said that if there was a contest for handsome men in this world, this young master Yun-yang would be crowned the winner without even having to participate." While Amos was losing his cool more and more. He was on the verge of flying into a rage. No matter how much you praise others, it's still nonsense. Since he was praising this young master Yun-yang so much, this fellow in front of him could not be Yun-yang. How could there be anyone in this world who would praise himself like this? Otherwise he would be too shameless. Since he was not Yun-yang, what use was he? He was not fated with the prime of wine after all. Yun-yang said with a grin, "Old sir, it must be fate that we meet by chance. Let this young master introduce himself. I am Yun-yang, the only young master of Marquis Yun who we were talking about and praising just now." The old man almost coughed. This sentence was simply a strange and unexpected peak. "You've been showering me with extravagant praise, but it turns out that you're just praising yourself? Is there really such a shameless person in this world?" The old man almost laughed in exasperation. He squinted his eyes and teased, "You are the young master of Marquis of Heavenly Clouds, Yun-yang? According to what you've said, this jar of wine is the sovereign of wine? One of the remaining 9 jars of wine?" "Wrong." Yun-yang was resolute. The old man was stunned again. "Why are you bragging if it's not you?" Yun-yang said, "According to what I know, the owners of the 6 pots of wine that were auctioned off were wine connoisseurs, but they were all addicted to wine and had already finished the dream. No one knows where the remaining 2 jars are, let alone if they still exist in this world." Yun-yang said faintly, "Therefore, this pot of wine of mine can be said to be the one and only pot of wine in this world. It makes sense to say that it's the one and only pot of wine in existence." The old man was stunned. "Is this really that jar?" Yun-yang said faintly, "Whether it is or not, there's a way to verify it. Since old sir likes wine, I'm sure you've heard that Feng Xiang'e's supreme wine can form a soaring phoenix in the air once the clay seal is broken and the fragrance of the wine wafts out. This is Feng Xiang'e's unique mark. I believe that not many people would imitate it for the few remaining jars of wine." The old man's interest was piqued at once. He was drooling with desire, unable to sit still. Yun-yang's palm rose and fell. There was a loud clap. The clay seal had been broken, and an indescribable fragrance of wine wafted out. The old man took 3 steps towards him, his nostrils twitching wildly. Swoosh, 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 as the fragrance of the wine rose, the image of a soaring phoenix slowly materialized in the air. Although it was hovering in the air, its arrogant gaze was filled with disdain, looking down on the world. It's the supreme wine." The old man's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Looking at the phoenix that was slowly dispersing in the air, his breathing quickened. With a raise of his hand, the bamboo hat flew away. It revealed a chiseled face that was filled with vicissitudes, but his gaze was clear and bright. His eyes were like a 4 or 5-year-old child's, clear with distinct black and white. There was even a hint of innocence in them. The old man's hair was grayish-white like what Yun Yang had seen just now, but looking at each strand by strand, he did not look old at all. Instead, he was filled with the energy of life. The vicissitudes on his face were as if he had gone through all the worldly affairs of his life. At first glance, he looked lonely and weary, but upon closer inspection, one would actually think that the face was handsome. His eyebrows in particular were slanted upwards, but the arc was not too wide. There was no menacing aura. However, if he had sprung up abruptly, the imposing aura would have been quite intimidating. Yun Yang was even more certain when he saw it. Of course, it's the supreme wine. Yun Yang slowly began to remove the last layer of defense on the wine jar. Using a dagger, he only managed to make a thumb-sized cut. The old man's expression was one of admiration. Those who had never tasted the wine brewed by Feng Xiang'e would not know the intention of doing so. Even if there was only a little fragrance from Feng Xiang'e's wine, it would be a great waste. Yun Yang's actions made a thumb-sized cut at the top, but the bottom was at most the size of a soybean. After pouring a cup, he filled it with the wooden cork that he had scooped out. It was still seamless and the wine would not escape through the gap. Yun Yang smiled and said, "It's Feng Xiang'e's supreme wine after all. Of course I have to cherish it." The old man nodded with a smile. "That's right." Yun Yang lifted the wine jar and slowly poured the clear but slightly viscous wine into the goblet. When it was 80% full, the wine's fragrance was intoxicating, filling the entire lake. Finishing the goblet, Yun Yang took a whiff of it, intoxicated, and said, "It's indeed a dreamy item close to Tao. Legend has it that drinking wine of supremacy can bring one close to the realm of Tao. Sigh, it's a pity that there's too little of it." As he sighed, he stuffed the wooden cork back in. Placing the wine jar aside carefully, he picked up the goblet and took a sip. His eyes shone. Great wine. It's a never-before-seen wine indeed. It lives up to its reputation as a dreamy item. The old man beside him could not help being stunned, stuttering, You're not going to buy me a drink?" This fellow had laid out a table full of dishes, brought out a jar of wine, and talked about the past and present, blowing his own trumpet for half a day, hooking this old man's appetite to his throat. In the end, you're going to drink it yourself? You've laid out 2 goblets, all right? Are you just trying to look symmetrical? Yun Yang was even more shocked, staring at the old man with wide eyes. "Buy you a drink? Why should I buy you a drink?" The old man's mouth was agape as he looked at him in shock. Didn't you say so much just to buy me a drink?" Yun Yang looked at him speechlessly. "Old sir, I've said so much just to buy you a drink? Where did this come from? You're thinking too much." If Dong Qianling and the other popinjays were here, they would definitely slap the table in shock. Boss's boss, what's wrong with me praising myself? What's wrong with me analyzing the origins of all my wines in detail? Can't I show off? When it came to showing off, it had to be done in front of others. This is the ultimate example of popinjays of my generation. This is obviously the pinnacle of pretentiousness, a textbook example of popinjays. Perfect, it's too perfect. The old man was exasperated, the veins on his forehead pulsating. For a moment he was speechless. "I've said so much, from the beginning to the end, I only wanted to introduce my wine." Yun Yang said in confusion, "I'm done with the introduction, am I right? You know it too, don't you? You know it too, don't you? We had a pleasant conversation. It's done, isn't it? Isn't it also a pleasure for you to watch me drink? Do you think that just anyone can see the wonderful appearance of the wine supremacy? One should know how to be content." Yun Yang said seriously, "At least I've let you see the phoenix." The old man suddenly had the urge to kill someone. "Your father listened to you for half a day just to see the phoenix formed by the smell of wine? How despicable must I be then? Actually, I have a hobby of introducing the good things I own to others. It's fine if you think I'm showing off," Yun Yang said with a smile that was especially despicable. Yun Yang grinned, his smile was especially wicked as he said, "My delicious food, drinks, fun, all the good things I have. I enjoy them myself, watching others drool over them. I don't even need to eat to go with the wine and I can just enjoy a few more bowls of rice. It's so satisfying, you know?" The old man's exasperation grew more pronounced and thicker. He was so embarrassed that he did not know where to put his hands and feet. He felt like billions of mud horses were galloping through the manure soup after a rainstorm. "This is so embarrassing. Your father has lived for hundreds of years and I've never been as embarrassed as I am today. My face is burning. This bastard is the most despicable person I've ever seen in my life. But, why do I feel that what this fellow said is so reasonable? Even if it's crooked, it's still reasonable. I actually have nothing to say. Umph. The old man stomped his feet and turned to leave. He really did not have the face to stay here. However, Yunyang suddenly spoke again. If old sir is really bored and doesn't blame me for startling your fish just now, then let's fish, drink and chat. Watching the scenery of the lake and the mountains, feeling the chilly autumn wind. It's one of life's great joys. The old man had already turned around. When he suddenly heard these words, he couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. If I were to turn back and drink, wouldn't I be even more embarrassed? Even though he wanted to turn back, his neck was stiff and he refused to turn back no matter what. However, if he did not turn back, the pot of wine would have already been opened. It would probably be gone forever. Yunyang spoke again. It's better to share the joy than to be happy alone. Please do me this favor, old sir. The old man turned back like a whirlwind and chuckled. It's rare for you to show such sincerity. It would be impolite for this old man to refuse. The smile on his face softened. Yunyang was delighted. He had learned this trick from Dong Tianling. He had to admit that this despicable person's trick seemed to be quite useful. When Yunyang heard about such a person, he already had a plan in his mind. The difficult part was only the beginning. How to get him to drink his wine. This was the most important point. How could such a person come and drink obediently just because Yunyang offered to buy him a drink? Yunyang finally reached the goal of the first stage after going around in circles for half a day. Since the wine had reached his expectations, then, no matter what, this was the only way for him to fight against the other side at the moment. What to do next was the most important thing. Success or failure depended on this one move. Tonight at 0:00 p.m. Supreme was released. Brothers and sisters, please subscribe and support. Yunyang's success or failure depended on this one move, and so did the success or failure of Supreme. 2 months of free 410,000 words of updates. All the effort would be revealed at midnight. Chapter 129. Of course, Yunyang would not make things difficult for him. He poured a goblet of wine for the old man and raised his cup. Please? The old man had already picked it up hastily. Please? He tipped his head back and emptied the goblet. He praised, unrivaled in the world indeed. The prime of wine lives up to its reputation. I'm afraid I'll have to quit drinking after drinking this wine. Then, his expression turned solemn. The wine had dispersed and he could faintly feel an inexplicable force of Tao. It was an impact of the realm of Tao. Although it was weak and almost undetectable, such an impact was enough to shake an expert cultivator like him. The force of Tao that could only appear in this wine at its peak was what made Feng Xiang's wine so precious. He then took a deep breath and collected the wine from his limbs and bones, suppressing it into the secret parts of his body. Now was not the best time to comprehend it. He would release it when the time was right and he wanted to comprehend it. With his cultivation base and control over his body, it was not an exaggeration to say that he could force the goblet of wine out of his body at any time and pour it back into the goblet to drink it again. The effect and strength of the wine would not diminish even if he were to drink it again. If Yunyang knew what this old man was doing, he would definitely be dumbfounded. He drank the wine down his throat and swallowed it, burying it into his body, not absorbing it at all. That was the real deal. Yunyang could not even imagine what kind of expert would be able to achieve such a feat at his current stage. If this old man was a little more extreme and disliked Yunyang, he would most likely be able to crush Yunyang to death as long as his aura reached a certain level without needing to fight. What an expert. However, before Yunyang came here, he had already disregarded his own life and death. Yunyang estimated that he might not be able to defeat Old He's cultivation base even if he cultivated for another 10 years. If he could not find a breakthrough here, what was the harm in dying here? Another goblet? Yunyang's breath reeked of wine. Good wine. The old man was speechless looking at Yunyang's breath that reeked of wine. It had to be said that it was a great waste of God's gift for Yunyang to drink such an exquisite wine that only deities were worthy of. Because with his current level of cultivation, he was completely unable to comprehend the true wonders of this wine. Like a cow chewing on a peony? The old man let out a long sigh, raised his cup, and drained it in one gulp. Yunyang rolled his eyes. What's wrong with you, old man? I've already treated you to a drink, and it's such an outstanding supreme of wine at that, yet you're saying that I'm just a cow chewing on peonies? There was no one else like him. However, following the effects of the alcohol, the two of them were clearly getting warmer and warmer. Feng Mafei, who was watching from 100 feet behind him, felt countless question marks hovering over his head. He just couldn't figure it out. Young master. Supreme Cloud. You didn't pay attention to so many important things and came here to fish. It's fine that you're fishing, you're injured now, it's good that you're cultivating and recovering your energy. However, not only are you not fishing properly, you're also provoking others to fish properly. First, you've offended them and now you're treating them to a drink. This is fine, but what you've taken out is the only remaining jar of this priceless wine in the entire Tianshan continent, and you're treating an old man whom you've never met before. This was truly an absolute waste. Fang Mafei, who had some understanding of the supreme of wine, felt like he was about to faint. If he did not know that Yunyang was supreme cloud just by looking at his behavior, he was obviously an extreme popinjay, a super popinjay that surpassed the heavens. Old Sir likes fishing very much. Yunyang smiled. Fishing is a form of pleasure and also a way of life. The old man drank with his eyes squinted. You're right, but there aren't many people who can focus on fishing in peace in this continent now. Yunyang sighed. I like fishing very much too. Yunyang's voice turned deep and distant. Old Sir is much older than me, I'm sure your realization is deeper than mine. The old man asked curiously, realization? You're so young, what realization do you have? Why don't you tell me about it first? Yunyang smiled faintly. Then this junior shall start the ball rolling. I'll listen to Old Sir's opinion later. I personally think that when we're fishing we form heaven, earth and man, the coexistence of the three elements. The old man was taken aback. What do you mean? Such a theory was unheard of. Even though the old man was knowledgeable, he was still interested in probing further. When we're fishing, we're the heaven. The water in front of us is, of course, the earth. The fish in the water are humans. Yunyang said leisurely, the bait we throw can be anything in this boundless world. It can be wine, women, avarice, fame and fortune. As for the fish below, due to their different personalities and preferences, they choose the bait they like to chase after. Whether it's a big or small fish, as long as the bait we throw catches its fancy, it'll take the bait. The only difference is the length of time. Even if it's a fish that stands aloof from worldly affairs, it can't avoid taking a fancy to a certain bait and will take the bait it likes. Yunyang said, it's just like life in this continent. How many people can avoid the temptation of wine, women, avarice, fame and fortune? Watching a fish being caught by me at that moment, my heart will be filled with a myriad of emotions. It's indescribable. It means that no matter how much the fish that's been hooked struggles, it can't escape its fate. Yunyang said, isn't it the same for humans? As long as you step onto a certain path and work hard for a certain pursuit, there's basically no turning back. Actually, we're eating bait every day, or rather, we're moving forward with the bait that we yearn for in our hearts. Yunyang smiled and raised his cup. Please. The old man frowned and thought deeply before saying, that makes sense. It really does make sense. I didn't expect you to have such an epiphany at such a young age. Yunyang smiled faintly. Also, looking at the water in front of us, even if it's not moving, it feels like it's floating and constantly changing. Perhaps, when we can't even notice it, the fish in the water has already experienced a lot of vicissitudes. As for heaven's will, although it's existed since the beginning of time, why would it care about a person? Or a person? Heaven's will goes on forever, but how many times has the human realm changed and changed? From this point of view, what's the difference between us and the fish? There are even some places where we're not as good as the fish. Humans are not as good as the fish. The old man closed his eyes and thought about Yunyang's words carefully. After a long time he sighed and said, you're right. He paused and said, what you've said is not bad at all. It makes sense. He kept his eyes closed and did not open them. After a while, he opened them and said, thank you, young friend, for your guidance. He actually bowed to Yunyang in a very formal manner. His eyes were filled with contemplation. After a long time he said, young friend, you're young but you seem to have experienced a lot. Yunyang smiled faintly. Of course not as much as you. The old man kept his thoughts and said with a smile, let's drink, please. Yunyang drank as he poured wine while the old man emptied his goblet, looking extremely refreshed. The pot of prime of wine was about 10 caddies at most. After 100 years of accumulation, there were only 4 to 5 caddies of wine left. It was emptied before long. Although Yunyang had drunk quite a bit as well, it was only about 20 to 30% of the total amount. The remaining 70 to 80% had gone into the old man's stomach. Fang Mafei was envious of the scene, grumbling inwardly, "O young master, O Lord Supreme Cloud, why didn't you share some of this good stuff with me and Lao Mei? Is it really alright to let an outsider take all of it?" However, what young friend said isn't applicable here. The old man was embarrassed to see that he had basically drunk all of it, so he took the initiative to speak up. "May I ask what it is?" Yunyang asked. "There's a type of fish in this lake that not only are fishing experts rarely able to catch, but even cultivation experts are helpless against it, the old man said. Yun Yang was taken aback and said in surprise, "Oh, may I ask what's so special about this fish that even cultivation experts can't do anything about it?" The old man chuckled and said, "The reason this fish can't be caught is because it has an innate ability. Once it's attacked by an external force, be it mystical chi or any other force, even if it's the force of thought, it'll turn into flowing water immediately and leave no trace behind. How can it be caught? Even if one were to catch this fish when it's defenseless, it'll turn into flowing water and mist immediately, disappearing without a trace. No matter how strong one's cultivation base is, one can't capture even a drop of the fish's essence. There's such a mystical fish in the 1,000-feet lake?" Yin Yang was stunned. "That's right, there's such a mystical fish," the old man said. Yin Yang thought about it and said, "You said that fishing experts rarely get anything, but it doesn't mean that they don't get anything at all. This means that although this fish is mystical, there's still a chance of catching it." The old man smiled and said, "That's right. This fish can't be caught by force, but it can be caught with fishing hooks. As long as the hook is successfully hooked onto the fish's mouth, the fish will no longer have the ability to turn into flowing water. Once it leaves the water, it'll be no different from an ordinary fish. It's not right to say that this fish is completely the same as an ordinary fish, because this fish's appearance is very strange. There are only 7 scales on its entire body, and each scale is of a different color." "Old sir, are you talking about the 7-scaled deity?" Yin Yang was moved. "But this is only a legend of the 1,000-feet lake." "That's right. It's the legendary 7-scaled deity, but I can guarantee that this fish truly exists." The old man said faintly, "Besides, there are only 3 places in the entire Tianshan continent that have this fish, and this 1,000-feet lake is the 4th place that has yet to be discovered." Yin Yang suddenly thought of something. Chapter 130. When the 9 Supremes had first gathered, Supreme Earth had said that although Supreme Water's physique was compatible with the 9 Heavens domain, it was not the best. One day when Supreme Water returned, the group was surprised to find out that Supreme Water's cultivation speed had become the fastest among them. Supreme Earth was very puzzled about this. He had even asked Supreme Water what was going on. Supreme Water could not explain it either. He only said that his cultivation base could not keep up and he was depressed, so he went fishing at the 1,000-feet lake to relax. He caught a few fish and ate them. He did not feel anything unusual, but when he cultivated the water spirit conjuration, he was unprecedentedly skilled. He even felt that the water spirit conjuration was a cultivation method tailor-made for him. He did not need to put in much effort and his progress could be improved by leaps and bounds. The few of them had even gone to the 1,000-feet lake to catch fish for this. After all, Supreme Water's only special encounter during that period of time was to eat a few fish from the 1,000-feet lake. It was a pity that although they had caught a lot of fish, almost all the fish in the 1,000-feet lake had been caught that time. They ate until their bellies were round and they were almost all fattened up, but there was no effect at all. In the end, he denied this possibility. However, Supreme Earth's fishing habit seemed to have been formed then. Among the brothers, the ones with the highest cultivation base were Supreme Earth, Supreme Water, and Supreme Thunder. In spite of this, Supreme Water was the best when it came to the cultivation of their respective arcane skills. Yin Yang's thoughts ran wild. From 1 to 2, another incident surfaced in his mind. One day 2 years ago, Supreme Earth had returned from fishing and called out to Supreme Water mysteriously, saying that he would treat him to fish. Since then, Supreme Water's arcane skill cultivation had exploded at an even higher rate than before. He had advanced triumphantly and had broken through the 7th stage of the water spirit conjuration. Compared to the other brothers, he was 3 to 4 levels higher. However, the brothers were only happy about it and did not think too much about it. Since then, as long as Supreme Earth had nothing to do and had no mission, he would squat here to fish every day. Could this be the reason why Big Brother would come here to fish whenever he had nothing to do? A realization formed in Yun Yang's heart at that moment. "Old sir, since no one else has noticed the peculiarity of this lake, how did you discover it?" Yun Yang asked curiously. "This old man came to Tiantang City a few years ago because, I happened to look at the 1,000-feet lake and saw a faint rainbow. That's why I came down to fish. Back then I caught a 7-scaled immortal from here. That's how I felt." The old man smiled. When he spoke, he sounded a little unnatural. If these words were heard by an ordinary person, they would probably just let it go. In spite of this, Yun Yang had grasped 2 key points immediately. Occasionally he would overlook the 1,000-feet lake. Overlook? What did that mean? This 1,000-feet lake is a vast expanse of flat land, Where are you looking down from? How exactly was he going to get a bird's eye view? And, come down to fish. Where did you come down to fish? However, Yun Yang's expression remained unchanged as he said with a smile, legend has it that after the seven-scaled fairy eats it, one can become immortal and retain one's looks forever. I wonder if it's true. The old man snorted and said, that's just a rumor about a village man and a foolish woman. How can it be trusted? In this world, there's nothing that can make its user immortal and retain one's looks forever. Yun Yang asked curiously, may I ask, Senior, what are the benefits of eating the seven-scaled fairy? Senior said that you caught one by chance. I'm sure you're familiar with its benefits. The old man looked at him meaningfully and said, the human body is in line with the universe's creation, yin and yang, the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. These physiques are the foundation of defying nature. However, those who know this truth are few and far between in this world. Most of the people in this world will never know what kind of physique they have, wasting the precious raft that is the human body. Among all these physiques, there's one called the water spirit celestial body. To put it more bluntly, it's a body of water, a physique of water. The water physique is actually not that rare. There are many people who can swim faster than others. They can swim fast and they don't find it difficult to swim underwater. There are even people who can breathe underwater, and they don't feel uncomfortable staying underwater for a long time. This kind of person is probably the so-called water physique. They're compatible with the water spirit celestial body. The old man said faintly, however, this is only the most common and broadest view. To advance this physique to the next level and become a water spirit celestial body, one needs to go through 1,000 hardships, go through life and death, and still one might not succeed. However, with the help of the seven-scaled fairy in this lake, the old man seemed to despise the name seven-scaled fairy, but he still said, as long as one eats one, the potential of a person with the water spirit celestial body can be activated, transforming into a true water spirit celestial body. This is the unique effect of this fish. Even if a person without the water spirit celestial body eats it, they'll feel like they've returned home after entering the water. There's no need to worry about drowning. Yun Yang hesitated and asked, what if it's eaten by someone with another physique? The old man frowned, a little impatient with the question. Eaten by someone with another physique? There'll be effects for people with other physiques as well, but the effects won't be great. For example, those with the wood spirit celestial body will benefit from eating it because water is wood. However, those with the metal and earth spirit celestial bodies won't benefit at all if they eat it. What's more, if those with the fire spirit celestial body eat it, it'll damage their physique instead. It's not just a saying that water and fire don't mix. Yun Yang lowered his head, feeling a warmth in his heart. It turned out that the reason his eldest Supreme Earth came here to fish every day was not for him, but for his brother Supreme Water. For his brother to eat this fish and increase his ability, he had been fishing here all these years as long as there was no mission. What if the fated one eats 2 of the seven-scaled fairy? Yun Yang's heart wavered, but he asked persistently. The old man looked at Yun Yang strangely. This old man has only caught one after so many years. It's already a blessing from the heavens. You actually want to eat 2? Yun Yang chuckled awkwardly. The world is unpredictable. Who can say for sure? There's always a chance. Suddenly he recalled his current physique and the air of vitality. He could not help asking, is this fish considered a mystical beast? The question stumped the old man. After a moment's pause, he pondered for a long time before saying, it's really hard to say. He looked at Yun Yang's body, measuring him from head to toe, and chuckled. However, if you eat this fish, it'll probably be quite useful. Yun Yang was delighted. Do I have the water spirit physique? The old man chuckled strangely and said, you're definitely not the water spirit physique, but you can eat it. And it's useful to eat it. His gaze grew stranger and stranger. Finally, an irrepressible smile crept onto his face. Because your physique is yin and yang in one body, the universe and the 5 elements are all in one. Your physique is actually an amalgamation of all human physiques. Yun Yang heaved a sigh of relief and said, I didn't know that my physique is so impressive. The old man could not help but chuckle. Impressive indeed. This old man has never known that there's actually a physique like yours in this world. Your physique can indeed be called the best in this world. Yun Yang did not mind, but he was excited nonetheless. Really? Really? The old man chuckled strangely. Your physique is the best in this world. Trash. Water and fire converge, wind and thunder are one, yin and yang are compatible, the 5 elements are all in one, the universe and the universe are all in one. Your physique is truly the Milky Way. The old man could not help but guffaw as he spoke. Your traits are more numerous than the stars in the sky. This is the Milky Way? He was still babbling on and on, trying to explain himself. Yun Yang was exasperated, his pretty face as dark as the bottom of a wok. Looking at the old man's wide-open mouth and his tongue that was bouncing happily along with his laughter, Yun Yang felt like he had just been F***ed. I've treated you to such good wine and you're actually insulting me like this. Don't you know how to be more merciful? He wished he could scoop the wine out. Give me back my wine. Give me back my prime of wine, my dream. All right. We've talked so much and so much time has passed. Let's focus on fishing. The old man walked back, swaying. Every year after this period of time, we can no longer catch this seven-scaled fairy that you speak of. Yun Yang's eyes darted around as he said, Old sir, why don't we make a bet? The old man turned his head and raised his brows. Bet? What are we betting on? Yun Yang replied, Of course we're betting on fishing here. How about we bet on catching this seven-scaled fairy? The old man looked at him thoughtfully and finally chuckled. Child, so you know who this old man is? Yun Yang wore a bashful smile. I didn't know at first. The old man snorted and said, You didn't know at first? If you really didn't know, would you have taken out such good wine? You've used all sorts of tricks to make this old man notice you, then you've provoked me. You've used the wine to ease the tension and talked about life. Step by step, you've come to this point and now you want to make a bet with this old man? A pot of prime of wine is not something an ordinary person can take out. However, you've only taken it out as a stepping stone. How is it right if you don't have a request for such a grand gesture? Since you have a request, how would you know that I can fulfill your request if you don't know who I am? Child, don't be so glib. Yun Yang chuckled. Calm down. It's only natural that I have a request. Just like you said, I, Yun Yang, am a handsome man of my generation. Naturally, I'm not a fool. Chapter 131. Trap? How could it be? Yun Yang smiled. What trap would I dare set up after knowing your identity? The old man looked askance at Yun Yang and nodded, snorting, You, child, are not simple. Not simple at all. You've paid such a high price just to make a bet with me. Let me ask you, how are you so sure? Yun Yang chuckled, knowing that playing mind games with such a person would only backfire, so he told the truth instead. The original intention of this was really a coincidence. I only heard that someone was fishing here, so I was very curious. According to what I know, the fish in this 1,000-feet lake can't be caught, so there are very few people who fish here. Based on this reason, I paid some attention. Then your attire also made me suspicious. At that time, I was only a little suspicious. When I came here and saw you, that little bit became too. When you suddenly exuded your aura, although it was weak and lasted only for a short time, it still made me suspicious. When I saw your wine gourd, my initial bit of suspicion turned into 30% confidence. Actually, the life of enlightenment that I talked about later was more of a test. Those with a higher realm will be enlightened while those with a lower realm will think that it makes sense. However, your thanks have increased my confidence. Then, Senior talked about the fish and easily revealed the secret of the seven-scaled fairy in this lake. It's obvious that you don't want to owe me a favor, so you've given me information that exceeds the value of my wine. There aren't many with such a temperament. At this point, my confidence has become 50%. Yun Yang said casually, 50% confidence is enough as a basis for judgment. It doesn't matter whether you're the person I imagined you to be or not. Whether you are or not, my good karma has been sown. The bet is only a means. Whether I win or lose, our friendship already exists. It's hard to erase it. I've won the bet. I can ask one thing of you. I've lost the bet, but with the friendship we have today, we'll meet again one day, even if the martial world is long and we're at the ends of the earth. Yun Yang smiled and said, People like me won't give up any chance to benefit, but people like you don't care about what I care about. So me recognizing you and knowing you is no hindrance to you. It was just a very ordinary encounter. Isn't that right? Yun Yang chuckled. What's more coincidental is that I really have nothing to do during this period of time. Fishing is really good. Having someone to accompany me is naturally even better. If I win the bet, I'll gain another benefit. Even if I don't win the bet, I can leave it for another day. It's still good. The old man laughed heartily. You're quite an interesting kid. What's even rarer is that everything you've said in front of me is the truth. It's all from your heart. This is very good. Yun Yang chuckled bitterly. If I had the confidence to deceive you, I would have done so without hesitation. But in front of you, any lie, Any ingenious deception is just a joke. If that's the case, just tell me the truth. You'll be happy and I'll be happy too. There's no need to waste any extra effort." The old man guffawed again. Then he asked, "You wouldn't really want to bet on fishing with me, would you? Aren't you a little too bold to bet on fishing with me, someone who's caught the seven-scaled fairy before?" Yunyang said, "There's no loss when there's a bet. You said that you've only caught one seven-scaled fairy in total. What if I'm lucky and really manage to catch one?" The old man guffawed again. "Good lad, you've got guts indeed. What about the rules of the bet?" Yunyang smiled as well. "Of course, whoever catches the seven-scaled fairy first or whoever catches the most will be the winner. The time limit is 3 days. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. What are the stakes?" The old man asked with narrowed eyes. "The stakes?" Yunyang thought about it and said, "If you win, I'll think of a way to get you a pot of prime of wine. If you lose the lottery, just do me a favor." The old man snorted. "Do you think that pot of wine of yours is worth so much?" He looked at Yunyang from the corner of his eyes. "Then tell me." Yunyang gave up without hesitation. "If I lose, what do you want from me?" The old man was stunned by Yunyang's words. "What can a small fry like you do for me? How about this? If I lose, I'll agree to any conditions." Yunyang was eager to help the old man come up with ideas. "As long as you win, you can be my godfather or my master. Dream on." The old man rolled his eyes and said resentfully, "Wanting to be my godson, wanting to be my master? With your physique, it's simply wishful thinking." Yunyang smiled faintly. "I'm relieved that you won't agree." Of course, the old man did not know that today's rejection would make him regret it for the rest of his life. "Wait, what if it's a draw? Don't tell me you're planning to exchange the stakes after a draw and have this old man do something for you in exchange for you to acknowledge me as your godfather or be my disciple." The old man's gaze froze. If he could not catch anything, it would naturally be a draw. Yunyang was taken aback when he heard the old man. He had never thought that a draw would happen. After a pause, he said, "You're really thinking too much. If it's a draw, of course, all the stakes will be cancelled. If you're so hesitant or afraid of losing, then there's no harm in not going through with this bet. You don't have to provoke me, this old man will agree to it." The old man was so angry that his goatee was curling up. "Then what about the stakes that you've decided on this, Junior?" Yunyang asked. "Forget it, a pot of prime of wine it is." The old man seemed to have suffered a great loss as he said resentfully, "This old man will suffer a little loss." He thought that if he had another pot, with the help of the wine's Tao state, he might really be able to break through his current shackles. By then it would truly be wonderful. This child wants to win me in fishing? It's simply wishful thinking. For this Chilean fish, this old man has honed his fishing skills for so many years and settled his state of mind. Besides, it was still unknown how many Chilean fish there were in the 1,000-feet lake. The possibility of a draw would be the highest after 3 days. This old man would then be able to leave without any burden. How could this child with the surname Yun know that the Chilean fish was the smartest fish species in the world? Once one was caught, the other Chilean fish would sense it and turn into flowing water. They would not be able to be caught again and would not eat anything for at least a year. "Old sir, what bait did you use?" Yunyang stretched his head over. The old man shrunk back immediately and kept all his bait, hiding it behind his buttocks as he stared at Yunyang with widened eyes. You want to compete with me in fishing and you actually came over to ask about my bait? This old man has never seen someone as shameless as you." Yunyang rubbed his nose sheepishly. "Know thyself and thy enemy, and you will emerge victorious in every battle." He sat back down awkwardly. He took out his bait, crumpled it into a ball and hung some on the hook. Standing up, he flung the fishing rod out. The fishing rod in Yunyang's hand was rather famous. It was made of feather bamboo. Not only was it light, it was long enough as well, 30 feet long. The fishing line and other facilities were top-notch as well. However, his skill in casting the hook was unbearable and unsightly. With just a flick of the rod, the old man beside him almost burst out laughing. "An absolute rookie. Let's not talk about how well you flung the rod, but you actually managed to throw the bait away. You still want to fish? With an empty hook? With this level of skill, you actually dare to bet with me? Did this child lose to me on purpose and give me wine to bribe me? Too bad your father doesn't fall for it. I've won, there's no gratitude at all." Yunyang at least had a good eye, quickly noticing the mistake he had made. He quickly retracted his rod and cast the bait again. This time it was much better than the first time. An hour later the old man began to catch fish. Although they were ordinary fish, they came one after another as if there was no end to them. The speed was incredibly fast and the fish that were caught grew bigger and bigger. At first it was the size of a palm, then more than a caddy, 2 caddies, 5 caddies. Now there were more than 10 caddies, 20 caddies, and 30 to 40 caddies that were caught. The old man did not collect the fish that had already taken the bait. Every time a fish took the bait, the old man would flick his finger and knock the fish out before putting it back into the water. The fish floated on the water surface with its belly up for a while, and when it woke up, it would escape. The best thing about this was that it would not dare to take the bait for a few days at least. In terms of success rate, the old man had already caught hundreds of fish, but Yun Yang's float still did not budge. The fish in the 1,000-foot lake are the hardest to catch. There must be something wrong with the bait that this old man is using. Yun Yang was infuriated. This old man is cheating? Yun Yang had not caught a single fish even after a long time. Seeing the old man catching the fish that flew up like it was nothing, one bigger than the other, he was finally infuriated. Who doesn't know how to cheat? Yun Yang had wanted to start cheating tomorrow, but looking at the situation now, he would definitely lose if he did not cheat. After all, the old man had said that he had successfully caught a 7-scaled fairy before. If he managed to catch one, it would be too late for him to cheat then. Yun Yang called out in his mind, "Emmy, come out quickly." Aya, Emmy was waving its vines in his deific consciousness space. It retracted its vines immediately when it heard Yun Yang's call, sending a strange message. "What are you doing? Why are you calling me?" Chapter 132. Aya, Emmy felt wronged. The vines wrapped themselves tightly around him from top to bottom. It did not respond to Yun Yang's greeting. "You're using my energy to fish. Are you kidding, big brother? Even if you catch 100,000 caddies of fish, it won't be enough for me to catch one fish. It's the 7-scaled fairy fish. Let me tell you, eating it will bring you great benefits." "Aya, really? Try it if you don't believe me. If it doesn't work, I'll give you 10 jade pendants." Yun Yang promised. "Aya." Emmy retracted some of its vines and revealed half of its body, still waving at Yun Yang suspiciously. "Really? 10 jade pendants, is that a lot? Aya, still too little? Emmy, don't be too greedy. Alright, as long as you promise, I'll give you 2 jade pendants tomorrow morning, 2 in the morning, 2 at noon, 2 in the afternoon, and 2 at night. This should be enough, right?" Yun Yang gritted his teeth. "Aya." Emmy agreed. Its vines danced in joy. It was rare for its master to be so generous, saying that he would give it so many good things tomorrow. A ball of energy was sent out. "This ball is too much, it's too wasteful. Can we split it into 100 portions?" Yun Yang discussed. "Aya. A brave man would surely be motivated by a generous reward." Emmy agreed without hesitation and began to work. Yun Yang swung his rod again. The old man at the side looked at the rookie from the corner of his eyes. His heart was still filled with joy and confidence. The newbie is starting again, haha. Suddenly, the water in front of Yun Yang's fishing rod surged as if there were many fishes fighting for it below. The float that had been motionless dropped abruptly. Yun Yang was overjoyed and quickly lifted the rod. The fishing line swished as a big fish was hooked. The old man could not help but stare. Yun Yang's action of lifting the rod was obviously too late. Under normal circumstances, the fish would have escaped long ago. How did he manage to catch it now? Yun Yang made a fuss and followed up with a series of clumsy follow-up actions, pulling the rod upwards without any technique at all. After a round of forceful dragging, a big fish weighing more than 10 kilograms was pulled up. The old man was also puzzled. "What thread did you use?" Yun Yang smiled happily. "Wild silk, isn't it? It's pliable enough." The old man was speechless. "Where's the hook?" "It's the black iron hook. Once it's hooked, it won't be able to escape." The old man raised his head to look at the sky, as though he was trying to ascertain whether or not this place was the profound sky continent. The heavenly worm silk was extremely flexible, this was undeniable, but its weight was too light. Once it entered the water, it would inevitably float. Although the weight of the black iron hook was not light, it was filled with cold chi. When fish felt this cold, 99% of them would avoid it. This guy actually used the combination of the natural silk and the black iron hook to catch fish. This was the strangest thing he had ever seen in his life. Luck, it's definitely luck, it's definitely hard to replicate. The old man muttered to himself and turned his head to continue fishing. Then, he was surprised to find that there were no more fish on his side. On Yun Yang's side, the water was tumbling and the surface was murky. It was as if there was a large group of fish fighting for the bait below, and only those who won would be able to eat it. As if to prove the old man's imagination, the float on Yun Yang's fishing rod sank once again. Yun Yang lifted it and saw a large fish of more than 20 caddies being hauled up forcefully. The old man was dumbfounded, unable to believe what he was seeing. Then, it was probably the official start of Yun Yang's fishing show. A certain someone had used extremely clumsy fishing skills to continuously pull up one big fish after another, then knock them out and release them back. The surface of the water grew murkier, the splashes heavier. Some of the impatient fish jumped out of the water directly, pouncing towards where Yun Yang's hook was as if their lives depended on it. "This is uncanny," the old man mumbled to himself. "I'm not using something ordinary. I'm using treasured ingredients specially prepared for the fish's taste. There's even 1,000-year-old fish heart grass in there." What was going on? What was going on? "What bait did you use?" The old man finally could not help asking. "This." Yun Yang tossed a ball over. The old man took it in his hand and sniffed it, identifying it again and again, confirming that it was the most ordinary bait. He tried to hang it on his hook, but the float did not budge at all, with no fish interested in it. The fish on Yun Yang's side looked like they were going to a market. The surface of the water had already gathered into a large black mass, squeezed into a ball. The old man felt as if his worldview had been turned upside down. Could it be that the fish were especially fond of such rookies now? Otherwise, how could the scene before him be explained? Then the old man's side became quiet while Yun Yang's side became unprecedentedly busy. One after another, the big fish began to fly up. 20 caddies, 30 caddies, 40 caddies. The biggest one had actually gone up to more than 80 caddies. When the whole fish was hooked up, it was like a small boat being hauled up forcefully. It was fortunate that Yun Yang's fishing line was made of natural silk. If it had been any other material, the fishing line would have been the first to give way and snapped into two. The old man's eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. This old man has lived for hundreds of years and I've never seen such a bizarre thing. Then, the fish on the surface of the water seemed to have disappeared all at once. Yun Yang's side quietened down as well, and the old man heaved a sigh of relief. "T, this is normal. If I can't even catch one, I haven't lost, it's a draw." Just as he was thinking about it, he saw the float on Yun Yang's side shoot up like a rocket. Yun Yang lifted it up. Immediately, a colorful fish emerged from the water's surface. A Chilean fish. The old man looked like he had been struck by lightning. This child actually caught a Chilean fish. Oh my God, am I dreaming? This fish is too small, not even a caddy. What can it do? Yun Yang tilted his head to study the fish before putting it into his bucket. Too small? The old man wanted to cry. Such a big Chilean fish was already extremely rare. This old man has been fishing for hundreds of years, but I've only caught one such big Chilean fish, eh? As he thought about it, the old man's eyes widened again. Yun Yang's float sank again. Lifting it up, another colorful fish floated up. It was another Chilean fish. Moreover, it was twice the size of the previous one. At least 2 caddies. The old man felt dizzy. This world isn't going to collapse, right? Why was the Chilean fish so easy to catch? Once the Chilean fish was caught, the others would be frightened and would not eat any bait for at least a year. Forget about the details. It's more important to cast the hook and fish quickly. The old man hurriedly lowered his rod and focused, but his float did not budge. After a dozen breaths, there was another splash from Yun Yang's side. Another Chilean fish that weighed more than a caddy had come up. Another one. Another one. Another one. Wow, here comes another big one. This one is about 5 kilograms in weight. What a big fish. It had only been an hour, but the bucket beside Yun Yang seemed to be full. It was filled with Chilean fish that were still bobbing up and down. There were more than 20 of them. The old man was completely dumbfounded. The number of fish that he had caught in his entire life could not compare to the number that this child had caught in an hour. How many Chilean fish were there in the entire lake? He was afraid that they would all be swept clean after this. Yun Yang cast the rod again. This time, however, there was still no movement after a long time. The old man heaved a long sigh. His loss this time was inexplicable, but it was a crushing defeat. He had never lost so badly in a bet in his entire life. Just as he was sighing, he heard Yun Yang cry out in shock. The fishing rod was actually flying towards the lake like an arrow. This fellow had actually been pulled away by the big fish in his absent-mindedness. I'm King wronged? The old man shook his head speechlessly. He sprung up and caught up to the fishing rod that was drifting towards the center of the lake. With a flick of his hand, a rainbow-colored fish flew out of the water. Looking at the big fish, the old man almost lost his breath in the air and fell into the lake. Chilean fish. This one was at least 20 caddies. How could there be such a big Chilean fish in this world? When the fish was pulled up, Yunyang thanked him profusely. "Old sir, it's getting late now. Why don't we call it a day? We'll continue the competition tomorrow." The old man almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Continue the competition? Compete what? Chapter 133. Only one day has passed out of the 3 days? Yunyang was rather surprised. You've admitted defeat already? This junior had an unfair victory. The old man glanced at Yunyang, his eyes filled with resentment. An unfair victory? What else do you King want to fight? The aggrieved look in her eyes almost made Yunyang laugh out loud. Alright, let's go back and have an all-fish feast. We can't waste an entire day's effort. Yunyang was straightforward as well. Since the other had admitted defeat, he had of course won. Grabbing the bucket and looking at the Chilean fish that filled it, Yunyang thought for a bit and kept the dozen fish that weighed more than 3 caddies. He then poured the rest of the Chilean fish into the water and said, "This can't be done. You guys have to be careful in the future. Don't let anyone catch you again." The old man's eyeballs popped out of his head and bounced back. *CK, so many Chilean fish and this child actually let them all go? Those were all priceless treasures. Treasures that could not be obtained even if one had money. However, the next scene made the old man incredulous once again. In the water, none of the fish that had been released left. They lined up neatly in the water, poking their heads out and nodding at Yunyang. They were actually thanking Yunyang for letting them go? Then, swoosh. All the Chilean fish disappeared without a trace. Other than a string of bubbles, there was no other trace. Yunyang and the old man were dumbfounded. The world was unpredictable and the affairs of the world were mysterious. Nothing was too strange. How could there be such a thing? However, what happened next made both of them even more surprised. Forget the old man, even Yunyang's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. The few large fish that were still in the bucket actually straightened their bodies at the same time, exposing the upper half of their bodies out of the water. They stared at Yunyang with pleading eyes. It was as if they were begging. 2 round teardrops slowly rolled down from the eyes of the largest fish. Yunyang and the old man felt their scalps tingle. Were these still kingfish? Yunyang sighed, his hands gripping the edge of the bucket as he said seriously, "I don't want to eat all of you either, but my physique requires it. So, there's really no other way?" The biggest fish tilted its head, its 2 round eyes fixed on Yunyang. It was unclear if it understood him, but suddenly, it swam to Yunyang's right and extended its head, landing its mouth on Yunyang's hand. A ball of emerald green liquid spat out from the fish's mouth onto Yunyang's palm. A huge ball. When the emerald liquid landed on Yunyang's palm, it quickly disappeared as if it had seeped into his body. After the largest fish spat out that mouthful of green liquid, the rainbow-colored luster on its scales immediately dimmed. However, it did not stop there. After brewing for a moment, with a sound from its throat, it spat out another mouthful of green liquid. It was still the same emerald liquid that seeped directly into Yunyang's skin like before. However, after spitting out the second mouthful of green liquid, the 7 scales on the big fish's body seemed to have lost all of their luster, becoming dim and lightless. However, it was still holding on, wanting to spit out a third mouthful. Yunyang suddenly felt a pang of heartache. He quickly stopped the fish and scooped it up, saying, "Enough, enough. Keep the rest for yourself. I'll let you live." With a thought, a ball of air of vitality slipped into the fish's body. With a splash, the fish's body entered the water, but it did not leave immediately. Instead, it leaped up happily and nodded at Yunyang in the air. When it fell back into the water, it swam back and forth. It swam back and forth 3 times, still reluctant to leave. "Go." Yunyang felt his tone softening. "Don't get caught again." The big fish splashed a huge wave and swam back into the deeper waters reluctantly. Yunyang sighed. When he turned back, he saw the dozen or so fishes in the bucket poking their heads out, their throats making soft noises as they stared at him. They were actually thinking of spitting at him. Yunyang did not know whether to laugh or cry, but the softness in his heart grew stronger. Placing his hand on the edge of the wooden bucket, each fish spat out a mouthful of air of vitality before sending them back into the water. This all-fish banquet? Forget it. He had already won anyway. The old man watched this shocking and tragic drama of the mermaid on the side, and his eyes were already hanging out of his eye sockets. It was obvious that he was shocked beyond belief, his face blank. How could there be such a bizarre thing in this world? There were only 3 fishes left in the bucket. The old man came to his senses, knowing that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He approached Yunyang hesitantly. I say, young friend? Yun-yang turned and asked in confusion, The old man actually blushed and said, can you let these 3 fishes spit all at me? Yun-yang was taken aback. Sure. Then he moved away without hesitation. The old man placed his hand there. The 3 fishes that were about to spit at him sank back into the bucket with a splash. None of them had given in. The old man looked embarrassed. He had never been so embarrassed in his entire life. F***ck, even the fishes are looking down on me? Yun-yang was puzzled as well, so he tried to persuade the old man, spit it at him. It's the same, it's all saliva anyway. There were only 3 large fishes that weighed 4 to 5 caddies in the bucket. They revealed their bodies reluctantly and spat on the old man's hand. Yun-yang scooped them up and did the same thing, sending a stream of air of vitality before sending them back into the water. Not long after, the 3 fishes had finished spitting and there was not a single fish left in the bucket. The 3 fishes swam a few rounds in the water and spat bubbles at Yun-yang for a while before they swam their tails reluctantly and swam back into the deep waters gracefully, disappearing. Halfway up the mountain, the surface of the lake returned to its original calmness. The old man sucked in a long breath and exhaled. Suddenly, his expression was solemn as he bowed to Yun-yang and bowed respectfully. Young friend Yun-yang, I, Ling Xiaozui, am indebted to you today. Thank you very much. Although Yun-yang had already guessed it in his heart, he still felt a jolt of shock when the elder admitted his identity with his own mouth. Ling Xiaozui. This was Ling Xiaozui, the publicly acknowledged unrivaled expert in the world. A personage that shook heaven and earth like a mystical dragon. The mystical dragon soars above the mortal realm, a pot and a sword soar to the heavens. There are countless people in the 4 seas and 8 wastelands, the world's heroes are supreme. The legend of the world, the myth of this world, Ling Xiaozui. Hearing that the person before him was the legendary legend of the world, the unrivaled expert Ling Xiaozui, Yun-yang's expression remained unchanged as he said with a smile, it's Elder Ling indeed. I've guessed correctly. Ling Xiaozui's gaze was clear as he looked at Yun-yang. At this moment, his entire demeanor, aura, and even his face had undergone a drastic change. His face was still the same, but the feeling he exuded was completely different. You've explained it just now, so you found me? Ling Xiaozui's eyes were trained on Yun-yang as he said, but I still don't understand. Everything you've done and that pot of prime of wine, was it just a test? Yun-yang chuckled bitterly inwardly and said in a low voice, as long as there's a 10% certainty, I'll give it my all. Elder Ling should be able to understand now. Ling Xiaozui was visibly moved as he said, I see. He looked at Yun-yang meaningfully and said, young friend, you've lived a tiring life. Yun-yang smiled faintly, his gaze unfocused as he said, who in this world can live a tiring life? I've lived a tiring life, but Elder Ling, you're an otherworldly person. Have you never lived a tiring life before? It seemed like a coincidence that so much information had come all the way here just for a possible guess, but how much planning was involved in this coincidence? It was more than just coincidence, it was luck. Ling Xiaozui exuded an otherworldly aura, but his pair of clear eyes, black and white, seemed to be brimming with curiosity towards the boundless world, just like a child in his teens. It was this temperament that allowed him to aspire to the pinnacle of martial arts. It was also this temperament that allowed him to leave behind so many popular legends, including admiring Yun Zuyu and befriending Yun-yang. In spite of this, such an otherworldly person, a legend of the world, had once fought against the Four Seasons Tower for over 100 years due to the vicissitudes of life. It had been over 100 years. It was such a legend, the world's unrivaled expert, who could not defeat the Four Seasons Tower even after over 100 years. He could not even harm the tower's foundation. The Four Seasons Tower's terror had risen to another level in Yun-yang's eyes. Still, these 3 fishes don't seem to be worth Elder Ling's gratitude, do they? Yun-yang asked curiously. As he spoke, he packed up. Fang Mafei was helping to pack up as well. Right now, Fang Mafei's expression was still that extreme shock. The confusion in his eyes had yet to recede. Ling Xiaozui. Oh my gosh. This was the unrivaled expert acknowledged by the world. Chapter 134. Young friend, you have no idea. Ling Xiaozui looked at Yun-yang with a rather complicated gaze. This Kirin fish, the 7-scaled fairy that you speak of, is a gift from heaven. Legend has it that it's a spiritual creature of the divine river, not imbued with any mystical art or power in this world. It can only be caught by fishing. Eating it has a great effect, even a heaven-defying effect, but in reality, it's still far from unleashing the fish's true value. This is because the Kirin fish is born with intelligence. You catch it, kill it, and eat it. The resentment of the Kirin fish itself will be consumed by you as well. This resentment will cause the essence of water soul to be greatly restricted. At most, you can only obtain the essence of water soul but not the essence of divine water. The fish that you caught today, because of my little friend's kindness, the fish returned the favor with gratitude. They spat out their essence to you, and this is the true essence of the heavenly water. It is also the purest water soul energy in this world. Ling Xiaozui sighed. I don't know how you managed to catch so many Kirin fish in one go, nor do I know how you managed to obtain such gratitude from the Kirin fish out of nowhere. To actually make them release their essence willingly at the expense of damaging their foundation. It's been said that there have been people who were fated with this fish in the past, with some fish voluntarily releasing the essence of divine water to the fated person. The fated person became a legend because of the essence of divine water, but to have so many Kirin fish give it to one another in a group like this today, this is the first time in Tianshan continent's history that I know of. It's unprecedented, and I believe that even the future generations won't be able to replicate it. Yun Yang's heart skipped a beat. He knew that what he had done might not be possible for others, but he did not expect the scene to be so shocking in Ling Xiaozui's eyes. Of course, this also meant that what he had gained today would definitely far exceed his initial expectations. It would be an astonishing gain. Although the essence of divine water that this old man has obtained is only released by 3 fish and can't be compared to what you've obtained, young friend, it's enough for me to transform my physique completely and even dispel the Kirin fish's resentment. Ling Xiaozui said honestly, to me this can be said to be the grace of rebirth. Speaking of which, I came here to fish for the Kirin fish, but I never imagined that I would be able to reap such a great harvest. Originally, I thought that it would be a great fortune to be able to catch a single Kirin fish, but I didn't think that my first meeting with little friend would result in such a great harvest. After I transform my physique, my cultivation will experience an unprecedented breakthrough. And this shackle has trapped me for more than 100 years. Therefore, you are fully deserving of this gratitude. Ling Xiaozui spoke solemnly. Yun Yang nodded solemnly and said, if so, I shall accept Elder Ling's gratitude. Elder Ling, you only have 3 small fishes and you can change your aptitude. Then Yun Yang expressed his eagerness. The amount of essence of divine water he had received was at least 100 times more than what Ling Xiaozui had received. Since Ling Xiaozui could change his physique, did it not mean that he could as well? Even if Ling Xiaozui was the world's unrivaled expert, his innate aptitude could not be 100 times better than Yun Yang's. Yun Yang was also a peerless prodigy with 8 innately awakened chakras now. Ling Xiaozui coughed and said with a strong sense of pity, little friend, it's true that what you've received this time is 100 times more than what I have, but it's also true that your physique is too heterogeneous. Although the essence of divine water can rejuvenate you, you'll be affected by other factors. Let me put it this way. You can basically advance by leaps and bounds when you cultivate the cultivation method of water in the future. However, you'll encounter a bottleneck. This bottleneck will stop you from moving forward. Unless you are able to cultivate all the cultivation methods that are suitable for your physique and maintain the momentum of progressing at the same time. Only then will you be able to advance the water element cultivation method once again after reaching a certain level. Otherwise, Ling Xiaozui shook his head sympathetically and heaved a deep sigh. Looking at a lucky person who had an unparalleled foundation in certain aspects but could only be a mediocre person due to the influence of his physique, Ling Xiaozui could not help feeling that it was a pity. Yun Yang's expression did not change. He even smiled, not at all offended. Actually, I have other ways to help you, Ling Xiaozui said after some hesitation, unable to suppress the pity in his heart. What is it? Yun Yang asked. Little friend, your foundation is still shallow. As long as I use my cultivation base, combined with the art of divine ice water that I've cultivated, I can freeze all the other aspects of your body that don't belong to the water element. Ling Xiaozui said, then you can possess a single water attribute and turn from a useless person into a prodigy. When your cultivation base has improved to a certain level, you can completely assimilate the celestial ice energy I've planted in you. Then you can turn the frozen portion into a water attribute as well. It's just that doing this will take a huge toll on me. Your future will only be as high as I am now, unable to go any further. Ling Xiaozui sighed. Initially, with so much essence of divine water, you can definitely go further than I can now. What a pity. This also means that if I were to be frozen by you, I won't be able to cultivate the cultivation methods of other attributes in the future? For example, the cultivation method of the fire element? Yin-yang asked. Not only will you not be able to cultivate it, you won't be able to. However, your improvement in the water attribute will be extremely shocking. In at most 10 years' time, you'll have the qualification to be ranked among the world's top experts, Ling Xiaozui said. Forget it. Yin-yang said, I think everything is fine now. As the saying goes, more haste, less speed. I'd better not covet that amazing qualification. Ling Xiaozui could not help being stunned. Fang Mafei, who was behind him, almost fell into the lake as well. For a moment, both of them could not believe what their ears had just heard. Fang Mafei in particular, could only feel his head buzzing. To change one's physique, to be a water soul genius, to be as invincible as Ling Xiaozui in the future, you actually rejected it? Are you still human? You're already like this, are you still not satisfied? Young master, could it be that you're actually a demon in your bones and want to ascend to heaven? Fang Mafei truly felt that he was not feeling well. Ling Xiaozui was stunned as well, looking at Yun Yang's steady and unhesitant answer, the determination in his tone, and the unwavering expression on his face. With his hundreds of years of experience, how could he not know that Yun Yang was not acting on impulse? It was a decision that had been made after careful consideration. Finally, he sighed softly. Yun Yang wore a faint smile on his face. If I give up everything else, I might be able to possess an unparalleled ability in a short period of time. It would be a great achievement for me, but what about my brother's reputation and legacy? They're on me, they're like my brothers. I won't give them up even if I die. Even if I'm useless for the rest of my life. Besides, I've put in so much effort to make you owe me a favor. How can I let you repay it so easily? Yun Yang boarded the carriage and Ling Xiaozui followed suit. Leaning against the wall, he closed his eyes and pretended to sleep, looking content. He did not ask about the bet with Yun Yang, nor did he mention a word about what Yun Yang wanted him to do. Yun Yang did not say anything either. Both of them were silent. Yun Yang was checking if there were any changes to his body after absorbing so much essence of divine water. Ling Xiaozui was also combing through his body. This was the most important moment, how could he be in the mood for idle chatter? After fishing for a whole day, Yun Yang, who had just recovered from his injuries, felt fatigued immediately. After all, he still could not use mystical chi while Emmy could not help him heal further due to its previous exhaustion. Once he relaxed, he felt his arms aching. The faint scent of cosmetics wafted over in the dusk. It was the hustle and bustle of the East Bank. Songs and songs could be heard while the lanterns in front of countless brothels were lit. The carriage continued to move forward. Ignoring the bustle outside, Fang Mafei sat on the shaft of the carriage, acting as the coachman. A seventh peak pinnacle expert acting as a coachman, but Fang Mafei did not think it was beneath him. He knew very well who was sitting in the carriage. One was the world-renowned Supreme Cloud, the embodiment of the Empire's loyalty. The other was the legend of this world, the unrivaled expert Ling Xiaozui. Fang Mafei even felt a sense of pride for being the coachman of these two people. Do they think anyone can be their coachman? That also requires qualifications, strength, and opportunity. The 1,000-feet lake had long been left behind. Lanterns were hung high on both sides of the road. Under the night sky there were crowds everywhere. Looking from this road, Tiantang City's prosperity could be said to be the highest in the world. Fang Mafei drove the carriage in a low-key manner, walking by the side of the road, afraid to disturb the two bosses in the carriage. However, less than 3 miles away from the 1,000-feet lake, a group of people overtook the carriage from behind and stood in front of it, blocking its path. Fang Mafei could not wrap his head around the situation. Did this mean that they had encountered a roadblock? What was going on? Did they want to rob him, rape him, or kidnap him? Do you know who's in the carriage? The leader was dressed in luxurious brocade clothing. He stood with his arms behind his back, looking arrogant and condescending. Sir, please stop for a moment. My master would like to discuss something with your esteemed self. Fang Mafei did not know whether to laugh or cry. May I ask who your master is? Do you know who we are? The man in brocade snorted and said in a displeased tone, Why are you asking so many questions? Ask your master to come out quickly. We have something to discuss with him. Fang Mafei did not want to cause trouble. He suppressed his anger and said in a low voice, Then you have to tell me who you are and who your master is. I can at least have a reason to report. Chapter 135. The corners of Fang Mafei's lips twitched. If it was only Yun Yang inside, he might be worried that Yun Yang would be at a disadvantage. After all, the other party was a prince. Now, however, Fang Mafei only felt that it was hilarious. He turned to report, "Old master, young master, the fourth prince's men are requesting an audience." When the embroidered-robed man heard him say the word request to see, his complexion immediately turned cold. Request an audience? F*** King Hell, who do you think you are? Yun Yang rolled his eyes and alighted from the carriage, saying, "Ask what's the matter." The man in brocade looked at the handsome young man in front of him in confusion and said doubtfully, "Child, can you make the decision? Ask the old man inside to come out." Yun Yang had wanted to vent his anger and send these fellows back home in disgrace, but upon hearing the man's words, he turned his head and said, "Elder Ling, it looks like you're the cause of this. You'll have to do it yourself." He then turned and went back into the carriage. Inside, Ling Xiaozui looked at Yun Yang, amused and annoyed at the same time. He poked Yun Yang's forehead and scolded him, "You're so bad that you could ooze pus." Yun Yang shrugged. "Old man, that's enough. Can't you be more reasonable? They're obviously looking for you, why should I interfere? What does it have to do with me?" Ling Xiaozui snorted. Yun Yang could only see a flash before Ling Xiaozui disappeared from the carriage. Then Ling Xiaozui's indifferent voice came from outside, "What does your master want from me?" The man in brocade said, "Old sir, you've been fishing at the 1,000-feet lake for the past few days, day and night. We've all seen it. You've stopped fishing early this afternoon. You must have gotten something, haven't you? I heard that you've caught some brightly colored fish?" He smiled reservedly. "His Highness the Fourth Prince asked me to ask you to share some of the fish with us. What do you think?" Ling Xiaozui was dumbfounded when he heard the man. The one who caught the fish was Yun Yang, wasn't it? Why does it feel so strange that you're asking me for it? Most importantly, who said that we had a harvest? Those fish were all released, okay. If you had really been paying attention to us, how could you not have seen it clearly? Share some with you? Ling Xiaozui was immediately distracted by the question. "No. Old man?" The middle-aged man in embroidered robes took a step forward with a gloomy look on his face. "You'd better think carefully." These words were asked by His Royal Highness the Fourth Prince. No one had seen Ling Xiaozui make his move, but the man had already been flung away with a mouth full of blood. The experts from the Fourth Prince's mansion who had followed the burly man here were furious when they saw that the old man dared to make a move. Then 5 figures flew over at the same time. Then a series of sounds rang out and the 5 of them were sent flying back at the same time. The 6 people who had been sent flying were lying on the ground side by side. All of them seemed to be paralyzed, unable to move even a finger. They looked at the old man standing in front of them with his hands behind his back, his robes fluttering in the wind. Their minds were a mess. This old man, what kind of monster was he? Why did he collapse before he could even see clearly? Especially the leader of the group, he was even more shocked and inexplicable. He was a 7th peak expert, the top expert in the Fourth Prince's residence. Against this old man he still had no way to retaliate. No, not only did he not have the ability to retaliate, he did not even see how the old man had attacked. Who was this old man? How could he be so terrifying? Ling Xiaozui dusted his hands and with a wave of his sleeves, a strong gust of wind blew the 6 people to the side from the middle of the road. He then turned back to his carriage. "Let's go." The carriage rumbled past. On the ground, the 6 people were still lying side by side, unmoving. After a long time, under the curious gazes of the crowd, they recovered some of their strength and picked themselves up from the ground. They looked at each other, their faces ashen. "Let's go back and report this to the Fourth Prince." The man in embroidered robes grimaced as he held the back of his waist, one side of his face swollen. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. "Did our men follow them?" "They did." "Find out which family that old man is from and where the carriage has gone." The man in embroidered robes looked menacing. "As long as he's still in Tiantang City, what can he do even if he's incredibly skilled?" The leading expert's lips moved, but he stopped when he felt a burning sensation on his face. He had wanted to say that there were some high-end martial artists that a mere prince could not afford to offend, what more when he was only the Fourth Prince's uncle. "Old man, you're not being kind." Yun Yang looked at Ling Xiaozui in dissatisfaction. "Why?" Ling Xiaozui asked with a roll of his eyes. "Why don't you eradicate the evil once and for all?" Yun Yang said angrily, "Just kill them all, then flash your name and leave. Who would dare move? To add another legend to your legend, to add another legend to this world. What you're doing now is stirring up a huge problem and then you're leaving all the trouble to me. How can you do things like this?" Ling Xiaozui rolled his eyes. "What did you say? You want me to go out and kill them and leave my name behind?" Let's talk about adding another legend. Anyway, you can carry my banner and do whatever you want in Tiantang City from now on, can't you? This is what you want the most, isn't it? Yun Yang said confidently, as a friend, isn't this what you should do? His words made Fang Mafei, who was outside, perspire. There must be elements of exaggeration and imagination. Just tell me, what do you feel after meeting me in person? Lao Mei and Fang Mafei's hearts were in their throats. This was a crucial moment. Young master, you have to answer them properly. After meeting you? Yun Yang said, I only feel that you're straightforward, honest, and a little childish. You do whatever you want without any scruples, yet you're able to abide by some things. All in all, after meeting you, I don't feel that the name Ling Xiaozui is that mysterious after all. At least it's hard to connect him to the legends and myths. Lao Mei and Fang Mafei broke out in cold sweat. He could be straightforward, but could you even use these to describe Ling Xiaozui? Was he tired of living? Why couldn't he be connected to the legends and myths? He was the world's acknowledged, unrivaled expert. Wasn't that a living legend? Ah. Ling Xiaozui laughed heartily, his demeanor relaxed and carefree. Yun Yang mused, if I'm not wrong, then old Ling's main cultivation method should be related to one's temperament? Ling Xiaozui pondered for a moment and suddenly shook his head with a chuckle. I'll say it if I want to. Yes, it's the divine heart of crimson. Although there were some changes later on to complement my physique to cultivate water soul sky split, overall, it's still the same. Yun Yang was hit with a sudden realization. I see. Indeed. A pure and innocent heart, forever maintaining a childlike heart, doing as one pleases, doing whatever one wants to do, free and unrestrained, a heart that is always lively and vigorous. To such a person, playing tricks on him was nothing but a joke, and it might even lead to a tragic outcome. If you want to play with me, then play. If you want to play tricks on me, I'll leave. To be more serious, I'll kill if I want to, slaughter if I want to. Chapter 136. The so-called masters of the Jiang who don't have to be unfathomable just because they are famous, or they have to be full of charisma, or they have to have that kind of attitude or posture. Ling Xiaozui looked at Yin Yang and said, remember, if a person can't live out his true self, it's meaningless no matter how high one's achievements are. At least, this is how one feels about this person. Yun Yang repeated the words several times in his heart, feeling that he had understood them very well. If a person could not live out his true self, it was meaningless no matter how high one's achievements were. Lao Mei and Fang Mafei, on the other hand, were drenched in sweat as they listened to him. They felt that Ling Xiaozui's words were like a morning bell that had enlightened them, piercing straight into the depths of their souls. After eating and drinking, Ling Xiaozui finally spoke, don't hide it anymore. I've lost the bet you made with me. Since I've lost, the wager has to be fulfilled. You can tell me your wager now. Yun Yang sucked in a deep breath and said, my wager is to ask you to kill someone for me. Kill someone? Ling Xiaozui chuckled bitterly. I knew it wouldn't be a good job. However, I have to make it clear first. I've killed countless people in my life, but there are 4 types of people that I will never kill. Loyal officials are not killed, righteous men are not killed, and virgins are not killed. Ling Xiaozui said. What about the last type? Yun Yang asked. I won't kill the 4 Seasons Tower's men either. Ling Xiaozui said. Yun Yang sat up straight abruptly. You won't kill the 4 Seasons Tower's men? Legend had it that Ling Xiaozui and the 4 Seasons Tower had fought for more than 100 years, killing until there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood, but the grudge had never ceased. Both parties were on opposing sides. Yun Yang had even thought of joining forces with Ling Xiaozui to go against the 4 Seasons Tower. If he had Ling Xiaozui's martial skill, it would be much easier to deal with the 4 Seasons Tower. Unexpectedly, Ling Xiaozui had suddenly said that he would not kill the 4 Seasons Tower's men. Yun Yang was dumbfounded at that moment. He was in a bad mood. It was fine if he did not kill the others, but if he said that he would not kill the 4 Seasons Tower's men, why would he spend so much effort to look for him? It would be better if he did not see it and did not fret over it. Did he have to seal the opportunity of cooperation? Was this really a good idea? Due to an incident back then, I went head-on against the 4 Seasons Tower. This confrontation lasted for 113 years. Back then, I killed anyone from the 4 Seasons Tower that I saw. Because of this, I was met with the 4 Seasons Tower's ambushes, attacks, and counterattacks. Ling Xiaozui's eyes glinted with a hint of reminiscence. No, I shouldn't say almost. I should say that every day at any time of the day, I'm in the Four Seasons Tower's tight control, ambushes and traps that are everywhere. At that time, I only relied on my own strength to force my way through. Although I was happy to take revenge, although I was in high spirits every time I broke through, although I was complacent because I had killed many enemies, I knew myself the best. Every step I took was difficult and life and death was at hand. Even if one's cultivation is profound and can maintain an endless supply of Shen Qi, the heart will still be tired. There is always a limit to the human heart. Ling Xiaozui said, that period of time was spent in killing. Just one of those days I had killed no less than dozens of people. When I killed the last few people I was actually softened. It wasn't that I couldn't kill them, but I was a little tired of it. Of course, this wasn't the main reason I gave up on going against the Four Seasons Tower. Perhaps, from the beginning I was determined to annihilate the Four Seasons Tower, but I didn't expect the Four Seasons Tower to be so massive. Its power was unprecedented and its organization was so tight that it was unimaginable. Later on, I found 2 of the 4 Supreme Lords of the Four Seasons Tower by chance and severely injured them. Finally, the Four Seasons Tower's Supreme Leader came out. It was more than 100 years after I went against the Four Seasons Tower. When Mr. Nian saw me, he proposed a battle without a second word. However, both of them fought for a day and a night without a clear winner. If they were to continue fighting, they would only perish together. There was no possibility of both of them being injured. Finally, both of them stopped. Then Mr. Nian told me something. Ling Xiaozui heaved a long sigh. What did he say? Asked Yin Yang. If everything went according to plan, Ling Xiaozui had given up on his grudge against the Four Seasons Tower from then on. This was the main point. Perhaps, this was the main reason why Ling Xiaozui had given up on going against the Four Seasons Tower. Mr. Nian said, Brother Ling, I know why you're deliberately going against the Four Seasons Tower. It's because your sworn brother, Heaven of Saber King Li Wujuan, died in the hands of the Four Seasons Tower. That's why you're determined to annihilate the Four Seasons Tower and avenge your brother. There's nothing wrong with this brotherhood. In fact, you've done well all these years. You've even shaken the Four Seasons Tower's foundation. However, you should also know that the reason Li Wujuan was ambushed by the Four Seasons Tower was because he had killed 3 of the Four Seasons Tower's men. We, the Four Seasons Tower, killed Li Wujuan for revenge. If we don't kill him, we won't be able to appease the people of the tower. You killing us is also for revenge. Let's not talk about revenge. Today I'll only talk about the truth. It doesn't matter if it's your family, your folks, even Li Wujuan's friends and family, or the families of your brothers and friends in the martial world. These people did their best to help you when you went against the Four Seasons Tower. Directly or indirectly, they caused great losses to the Four Seasons Tower. Let me ask you, have we ever gone against any of them? The tower's first principle is to seek revenge if there's a grudge. We'll never implicate anyone other than the victim. This is the tower's self-confidence, and it's also our code of conduct. However, you Ling Xiaozui are too strong. You can't be killed by mere humans. Even if we can't kill you, Ling Xiaozui, can't we kill your brothers? Even if we are incompetent and can't even kill your brothers, but are the families of your brothers all peerless masters? If the Four Seasons Tower wanted to make a move, I'm afraid that you can't save anyone other than yourself. Even if you tried your best to protect someone, you could only sigh helplessly as long as the Four Seasons Tower wanted to make a move. But we never made a move. No matter if you, Ling Xiaozui, think so, or if you didn't even think of it, it's still a great favor to speak of this matter. The Four Seasons Tower's first principle is to seek revenge if there's a grudge. We'll never implicate anyone other than the victim. This is the tower's self-confidence, but it's also our code of conduct. However, you, Ling Xiaozui, have killed thousands of our men over the years. That's why I've come out to fight you. However, you, Ling Xiaozui, are too strong. This battle has proven that you can't be killed by mere humans. Therefore, I've decided that if Brother Ling still feels that you haven't killed enough, I'll send an order immediately from this moment onwards. The Four Seasons Tower will launch the most extreme counterattack against Ling Xiaozui. However, the target will no longer be you, but everyone related to Ling Xiaozui. We won't rest until one of us perishes. On the other hand, if Brother Ling thinks that we, the Four Seasons Tower, still have some martial world morality and respect for you, Brother Ling, more or less, then we'll call a truce from now on and mind our own business. 113 years of grudge shall end here. Ling Xiaozui sighed softly. Yin Yang sighed softly as well. Mr. Nian's words were too beautiful. If they were in each other's shoes, Yin Yang would not have the confidence to smooth things over and force Ling Xiaozui to give in. Of course, if the person involved was Yin Yang, he would definitely fight to the end since he had the ability to fight Ling Xiaozui to the death. If he had to die together, then so be it. Revenge for his brother would be the first choice. So, since then both sides have stopped fighting. Ling Xiaozui said, I also promise that as long as the Four Seasons Tower doesn't provoke me first, I won't kill the Four Seasons Tower's men. That's how my fourth non-killing came about? Ling Xiaozui's clear eyes looked at Yin Yang and said slowly, You're so concerned about this. It looks like the people you want to kill are the Four Seasons Tower's men. Yin Yang grinned. I can't be sure if the other party is from the Four Seasons Tower. Besides, the Four Seasons Tower's men have always been discreet. When have they ever exposed their identities? How would I know who is and who isn't? Ling Xiaozui tilted his head and said, Why don't you tell me the name? Ling Xiaozui knew that Yun Yang was changing the topic to avoid saying that he would not kill the Four Seasons Tower's men, but he did not mind it at all. If he could kill one of the Four Seasons Tower's men and return the favor, why not? As long as he did not go against his promise. Yun Yang coughed and said, Actually, to you, the person I want you to help me get rid of is essentially forcing someone against their will. Whether or not the other party is from the Four Seasons Tower is secondary. Ling Xiaozui was taken aback and asked in surprise, Who is your target? Even I can't deal with him? Yin Yang chuckled. This person's ability is impeccable, even beyond my understanding of cultivators. However, due to my shallow ability, my judgment is inconclusive. Perhaps this person is incompetent in Elder Ling's eyes. However, I said that targeting this person is difficult for Elder Ling because according to your non-killing criteria, this person has fulfilled all three criteria. Back when the late emperor was still on the throne, he was the late emperor's teacher when he was the crown prince. When the late emperor ascended to the throne, he was the crown prince's teacher again. After his majesty ascended to the throne, he resigned and went into seclusion. Now he's the crown prince's teacher again? In the eyes of the common people, this person is a loyal official among the loyal officials, the tutor of 3 generations of emperors. Yun Yang said, since he's the tutor of 3 generations of emperors, his age is imaginable. At least, his face looks unusually old, like he doesn't have many years left to live. This person is also a great scholar in the Empire of Yutong, with countless disciples and followers all over the world. He can be said to be the ancestor of Yutong's literati, highly respected. Ling Xiaozui sucked in a breath. Such a person, the tutor of 3 generations of emperors, the leader of the literati, highly respected and should be admired by the world. You actually want to kill him? Chapter 137. Yun Yang chuckled humorlessly. This person's feat is far from this. This person has charged into the Golden Palace many times back then, meeting the emperor directly for the wronged officials and vouching for them with his life. He's been extremely supportive towards his disciples as well, fulfilling all their requests. He can be said to be a model scholar, a sage. If anything were to happen to him, there would be countless scholars willing to die for him. There would also be countless high-ranking officials who would stand up for him, unwavering in their determination. Yun Yang said, That's why I said that this person is a loyal and righteous man. Add to that the fact that he's popular and highly respected. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he's a living sage. Ling Xiaozui scratched his head, not knowing what to say for a moment. This person's name is He Han Qing. Yun Yang said, I wonder if Elder Ling has heard of this name before. The expression on Ling Xiaozui's face turned strange. The shock had disappeared, but what replaced it was an inexplicable expression. So it's him. Yun Yang said, So Elder Ling knows his name too? Ling Xiaozui chuckled humorlessly and enunciated each word clearly, Not only do I know him, he's Supreme Lord Spring Frost. Once the last 4 words left his mouth, Yun Yang felt his body tremble violently. Yun Yang could only feel a violent shudder run through his body. For a moment, it was as if thunder had rumbled in his mind, causing his eardrums to buzz. He had only asked casually, his original intention was to test if Ling Xiaozui had heard of this person's name. He had never expected Ling Xiaozui to give him an answer that caught him off guard. With Ling Xiaozui's reputation and status, he would never lie or say anything wrong. Perhaps, for Ling Xiaozui to be so certain, he must have been certain of this and had even crossed paths with this person before. However, a great scholar of his generation. An old official of 3 dynasties. The ancestor of scholars. A loyal and righteous man. Such a person who was like a sage in this world, was actually full of evil, devoid of conscience, perverse, cruel, merciless, and deranged. Supreme Lord Spring Frost. Thinking back to the Four Seasons Tower's people whom he had met in the past, Supreme Lord Springfrost would die immediately once he spoke of him. It would be an eerie and horrifying death where his soul would be destroyed and his body turned into a mummy. Then she thought of the benevolent, senile and righteous He Han-Qing. If nothing went wrong, his name would definitely be recorded in the annals of history, and his name would go down in history. Yunyang could not help but shudder at the thought of it. Back when I was dealing with the Four Seasons Tower, I had encountered this He Han-Qing. Yes, Supreme Lord Springfrost. Almost all the plots and traps against me were his handiwork. In the end, he even joined forces with another Supreme Lord to annihilate me. Ling Xiaozue heaved a long sigh. I mentioned that 2 of the 4 Supreme Lords were severely injured by me in the battle just now. One of them is Supreme Lord Springfrost. He Han-Qing, with your current shallow cultivation base, of course, you won't be able to recognize him. If the 2 of you had crossed paths before, I'd really wonder how you managed to escape from him. You're really too lucky. Yun Yang's hair stood on end as he listened. This He Han-Qing, Elder He, was actually a formidable presence who could exchange blows with Ling Xiaozue. He had even managed to escape when Ling Xiaozue's murderous intent was at its peak after an intense battle. He had only paid the price of being severely injured. Elder Ling is known as the unrivaled expert. Could it be? Yun Yang asked carefully. Don't mention the title of unrivaled expert in front of me. The bitter smile on Ling Xiaozue's face was genuine this time. How can I be the unrivaled expert with my insignificant abilities? Has there ever been an unrivaled expert in this world? Ling Xiaozue said solemnly, if there is, the unrivaled expert must have been framed by his enemy. Yin Yang coughed and scratched his head. However, he was inwardly shaken. Ling Xiaozue had said, this is my insignificant ability. Insignificant? At Ling Xiaozue's level, he would not use such a tone to be humble. There was no need to. Then what did this mean? When I went against the Four Seasons Tower head-on, I was at most a martial artist with some reputation in the martial world. However, after a few decades of pursuit, I was suddenly crowned as the unrivaled expert of the world. Ling Xiaozue's smile was bitter. Even that poem was written by the Four Seasons Tower's Mr. Nian. The more Yun Yang thought about it, the more horrified he felt. A chill ran down his spine. The divine dragon soars in the mortal realm, a pot and a sword soar to the heavens. There are countless people in the 4 seas and 8 wastelands. The world's heroes are supreme. Such a resounding poem was actually used to frame people? Is it really good to be famous? Since then, the challenges, attacks, traps, and ambushes I encountered were even more than what the Four Seasons Tower had purposely arranged. This is the price of being famous. A person may not be willing to bear it, but he has to. Ling Xiaozue chuckled bitterly. The grudge has been settled, but this title can't be taken down. I can only be the martial world's target for the rest of my life. Yun Yang nodded quietly. The Four Seasons Tower's move was indeed vicious, killing without spilling blood. If Ling Xiaozue's title as the world's unrivaled expert could not be taken off, the turmoil caused by this title would never cease in the long run. The ultimate outcome would still be buried under these 6 words. Beheading the unrivaled expert Ling Xiaozue. What kind of title was this? Who in the martial world would not want it? Yun Yang thought about it and said, if that's the case, this He Han-Qing isn't a man with lofty ideals, nor is he a loyal and righteous man. He's just fishing for fame, an ambitious man who paves the way for the Four Seasons Tower. Ling Xiaozue frowned and said, that may not be the case. He has done a lot of good things for the Empire of Yutong. Although his motive may not be for the Empire of Yutong, it's more to balance the continent's situation. The benefits are real. Yun Yang said indifferently, his merits have never been in my eyes. I only know that he's Supreme Lord Springfrost. His lingering blood curse of speech has caused all his subordinates to lose their lives immediately as soon as they utter the word Supreme Lord Springfrost. Just this alone is enough for him to die 1,000 times. Even if he were to die 1,000 times, he would not be forgiven. Lingering blood curse of speech? Ling Xiaozue sat up straight, his expression serious. Has he really cultivated the lingering blood curse of speech? That's right. Yun Yang thought about it and said, I've previously confirmed and imprisoned a few Four Seasons Tower's men. However, once they uttered the word Supreme Lord Springfrost, smoke would rise from their bodies immediately, their flesh and blood would dry up. Even their bones would turn into dust. They died a horrible death. This is the terror of the lingering blood curse of speech. Those who violate the blood curse will have their souls dispersed and their spirits destroyed. Ling Xiaozue's expression was grim. Recently, the empire of Yutong's veterans who had retired and returned home due to their physical disabilities have been disappearing continuously. 9 of them have gone missing at once, Yunyang said faintly. Besides, the relationship between these 9 people must be very good. Ling Xiaozui felt his blood rush to his head. As the top expert of the martial world, a martial arts master of his generation, Ling Xiaozui naturally knew of such a wicked method of searching for people. The spectral path of the soul, the abyss path of flesh. Just the thought of such a wicked method filled him with rage. There's such a thing? Yes. It's because of this that I met He Hanqing by chance. However, I didn't know that he was the Supreme Lord Springfrost that I've been searching for. Yunyang sucked in a deep breath. It's good that the two are one. This Supreme Lord Springfrost's ability is unfathomable. Looking at the entire empire of Yutong, no one can stop him now. Ling Xiaozui hesitated for a moment. A murderous aura rose from him, but it disappeared immediately. He said in distress, "But, my promise." Looking at Ling Xiaozui's dilemma, Yunyang suddenly had a strange feeling about this world's unrivaled expert. Such a person valued keeping his promise more than his own life. Although he was rather pedantic, he had to admit that he was a very adorable person. Besides, Yunyang also felt that it was because of this unyielding temperament that this person had reached his current martial realm. If he had given up on his beliefs and promises, he would not be so frightening, nor would he be so adorable. Yunyang thought about it and said, "Actually, even if Elder Ling had really attacked, it wouldn't have broken his promise because the Four Seasons Tower had attacked you first." "Attacked me first?" Ling Xiaozui was stunned. "Why didn't I feel it?" Yunyang rolled his eyes and said, "They were attacking someone Elder Ling cares for. Isn't that a violation of the original promise?" Ling Xiaozui was still puzzled, but he did not interrupt this time, waiting for Yunyang to continue. Yunyang did not dally, telling him about the Four Seasons Tower's actions against Cirrus House and the forced marriage of Yun Zuyu. Of course, Yunyang had tried his best to be objective when he was narrating, but he had still added in a lot of exaggeration. "They knew that Cirrus House was under your protection, but the Four Seasons Tower still did it. Didn't they attack you first?" Seeing that Ling Xiaozui was still hesitant, Yunyang continued, "Besides, I'm not asking you to kill the Supreme Lord Springfrost. As long as you beat him up, it doesn't matter if he's severely injured or on his last breath. As long as he doesn't die in your hands, it'll be acceptable no matter what you say, right?" Ling Xiaozui's eyes shone as he clapped his hands. "That's right, this is a great idea." Lao Mei and Fang Mafei, who were standing aside, were dumbfounded. How could this work? Both of them had the same feeling. How could this world's unrivaled expert be so easily fooled? Once the plan was decided, Ling Xiaozui and Yunyang began toasting and drinking to relieve their boredom, truly satisfying their alcohol cravings. The feast lasted until midnight. It was only when Ling Xiaozui was sent to the guest room to rest that Lao Mei asked cautiously, "Young master, you wouldn't have met a fake one, would you? How could this fellow be so easily fooled?" Yunyang chuckled meaningfully. "Easy to fool? Why don't you go try?" With a laugh, he returned to his room. Ling Xiaozui was easily fooled? How could this be possible? The reason that experienced martial artists like Lao Mei and Fang Mafei would have such an illusion was mainly because Ling Xiaozui had already decided to help him from the beginning. First, the lost wager. Second, the kindness of the 3 Kirin fish willingly spitting out the essence of divine water. He had only wanted him to think of a way to give him a reason to attack in a roundabout manner. Of course, when it was confirmed that the target was the Four Seasons Tower's Supreme Lord Springfrost, Ling Xiaozui no longer had any doubts about this vengeful target. All his inventory had been released at once. He had been writing from afternoon to night. He had wanted to gather 10 chapters, but he did not manage to write that many after all. Still, it was good enough that he had 9 chapters now. A long, long time, 134 chapters, a lifetime. Tomorrow's update on the 2nd will be at noon and afternoon. Seeking subscriptions, seeking monthly votes. Feng Family's Return Battle. Chapter 138. I am the Supreme One. My motive for releasing the book on the 1st of June was very simple. I thought that we all have a dream in our hearts, a childhood dream. Perhaps this dream can only exist forever but cannot be realized. However, the novel has provided us with such a fantasy paradise. We want to fulfill our dreams in the world of the novel. From the beginning to the end, I really did not feel how old I was. My childish heart was beating rapidly. I'm actually a rather sensitive person. My threshold for humor is very low. Sometimes, when someone farted and I heard it, I would laugh for a long time. A joke, when others were watching it expressionlessly, I could not stop laughing until others looked at me strangely. Speaking of which, it was a little awkward. Similar to my threshold for humor, my threshold for tears was very low as well. I was easily moved. My wife was watching a drama. I was someone who never watched dramas, but after watching it for a dozen minutes, I saw a tragic scene. My tears fell. Then the couple looked at each other with tears in their eyes. After that, I would always be laughed at. "Ah, you actually cried too." At that time, I was too ashamed to show my face. A grown man. Cough cough. Really. In short, my inner emotions have become richer. These are definitely my weaknesses in daily life or work. But for a job like writing a novel, it seems to be quite suitable. The book will be released on the 1st of June and the 1st of August. As a retired soldier, I have considered the timing of the book's release. To a certain extent, the Yunyang I'm writing about can be considered a soldier. Therefore, I thought that on the 1st of August, it would be a holiday for myself and Yunyang. The 1st of August is a military holiday. It is a holiday for all the nation's soldiers. Of course, I thought that it would also be Yunyang's holiday, the Nine Supremes' holiday. Taijing, the holiday of millions of soldiers. Let us celebrate it for them. Therefore, I chose to release it on the 1st of August. Of course, tonight is our annual gathering of comrades. My new book is released. With my overflowing vanity, of course, I want to show off in front of my comrades. I hope that everyone can let me have some pride in front of my comrades. Feng Ling's pride will depend on everyone. Back to the main topic, the next segment was, of course, asking for monthly votes. I was actually very excited on this day. After experiencing so many books being released, I was still very excited today. It has been 3 years since we last saw this battlefield. The fierce battle of Proud World was still vivid in his mind. But in these 3 years we were just spectators. The heaven domain is equivalent to me resting for a book's worth of time. Even when the firmament of the sky domain erupted with 10 updates, I rarely asked for monthly votes. Chapter 139. It was early in the morning. A troop of men had arrived at the residence of Yun's gate. They were the 4th prince's men. The 4th prince had sent out quite a number of men this time. 500 imperial guards in bright armor had arrived and blocked the residence of Yun's gate with great fanfare. The people who returned in defeat yesterday were at the very front. Although they looked menacing, they did not dare barge in directly. They only waited outside the gate. However, his attitude was clear. He wouldn't give up until he reached his goal. Many people who passed by hastened their footsteps in unison, afraid that they would get into trouble. Those who were more daring only took a quick glance before running away as well. It looked like the residence of Marquis Yun was in deep trouble this time. At this moment, a few irritated voices rang out. Make way, make way. What's going on with this big group of people? What are they doing? Lining up for training so early in the morning? Make way, don't block my way. Even good dogs don't block the way. Am I wrong to say that you are blocking the way? Aren't you all blocking the gate? Why are you glaring at me? Do you believe that I won't? Boss, I'm Dong Tianling, I'm here to visit you. Boss, I'm Chiu Yun-san. I'm here to share weal and woe with you, to share honor and disgrace, to share fortune and misfortune. Boss, the 4 young masters swung their arms and barged their way through the 500 imperial guards to the residence of Yun's gate. The 4 of them were cursing, but their faces were calm, as if they did not care at all. Even if something serious were to happen, could it be that we can't handle it even with so many of us together? Unless the sky was falling. Lao Mei opened the door and looked at the 500 troops outside. He was equally calm, as if he did not see anything, as he welcomed the guests warmly. All the 4 young masters are here? Please come in, my young master is not up yet, he drank too much last night? Dong Tianling was curious. Drank too much? Who did he drink with? Who's so amazing? You actually managed to get boss drunk. You must have taken advantage of him while he was still recovering from his illness. What a despicable person. That's right, that's right. Call him out. We have to avenge our boss. Chiu Yun-san rubbed his palms together. How dare he make our boss so drunk that he can't even get out of bed? I'll take him down myself. Let me do it. Xia Bingchuan said sarcastically. Chiu Yun-san, don't get tricked again after drinking too much. We brothers have to clean up your mess. Motherf asterisk Kerr, the promised luminary paste still hasn't been delivered. How many days has it been? What happened to the trust between people? Where are the people now? He must have learned something from toying with Chiu Yun-sen. Chun Wanfeng added, I'm glad that thing didn't come. If it did, Chiu Yun-san might be toyed with. I'm ashamed to be associated with him. Chiu Yun-san was so angry that his face turned green. Can't you guys get over this? If anyone says another word, I'll cut ties with them. Are you three hedonistic playboys addicted to making fun of other people's scars every day? See if I don't uncover your ugly faces in front of boss. The four of them entered in a row, arguing noisily. Outside, the fourth prince's men were enraged. Did they not see the menacing presence of the soldiers here? What are you guys up to by having so much fun? Butler May. The middle-aged man who was leading the team said sternly, Please report, Butler. We are under orders to capture the fugitive. Please open the door, young Master Yun. Do not delay us from capturing the criminal. Fugitive. These two words caused the four young masters to tremble. Boss was hiding a fugitive here? What kind of development was this? Lao Mei said, I will report this matter to the young master. Everyone please remain calm. With a loud clap, the door was shut again. The people outside could do nothing but continue to wait patiently. The residence of Marquis Yun was different from other marquises' residences. The residence of Marquis Yun had the Shang Fang sword guarding the residence. If one trespassed and was killed, it would be a waste of time. There was no justice to be sought. In spite of this, they had to do it. Boss, aren't you awake now? You look energetic. Dong Qianling came over in a friendly manner. Are you feeling better? Boss, this bastard Dong Qianling really doesn't know how to talk. He doesn't even know how to get close to us. Boss is not only energetic, you're obviously in high spirits and full of energy as if you've just played with 3 young ladies, Xia Bingchuan said. You only know about young ladies. Get lost. Boss, you're getting more and more handsome. Sometimes when I stand with boss, I feel that it's better if I'm a girl. That way I can be boss's concubine so that I don't have to see but can't touch. Chiu Yun-san said. Boss is the best. Chun Wanfeng said. Yun Yang's face paled as he listened, not the least bit in high spirits. The few of you wait a moment. As he spoke, he turned to Ling Xiaozue who was slowly practicing his martial arts. Brother Ling, there are people here to capture the fugitive. You, the fugitive, better go and deal with it quickly. Ling Xiaozue was exasperated. You're the fugitive. Your whole family is fugitive. However, this fourth prince seems to be a little too persistent, isn't he? No matter how genuine Ling Xiaozue was or how good his temper was, he was provoked. Dong Qianling and the other 3 young masters were stunned. The person was in your home, he should be under your protection. Why didn't you say anything about solving the problem? You actually let the fugitive handle it himself? Dong Qianling's eyes darted around as he said casually, friend, why don't I help you? Ling Xiaozue was still fuming, so he replied faintly, don't worry about it. He then turned and walked towards the door. The 4 noble young masters were all displeased. Dong Qianling pursed his lips and said, Boss, who is this? Why is he so arrogant? Chun Wanfeng replied, looks like he's rather arrogant. He thinks highly of himself. Xia Bingchuan replied, Tisk, interesting. Chiu Yun-san said, I think this fellow doesn't know the dangers of the world. He needs to be taught a lesson. Yun Yang coughed twice and ignored them saying, come. Have some tea, have some tea. The 4 fellows wanted to find out about Ling Xiaozue's background. No matter how out of line their attitudes were, Yun Yang could still see through their true intentions. However, what Yun Yang hated the most was playing such tricks in front of him. If you had asked me directly, I might have told you the truth. However, the 4 noble young masters digging their own graves and waiting for Yun Yang to bury them was something that Yun Yang did not like. If it had been before, Yun Yang would have liked it. However, after being severely injured and being treated by the 4 noble young masters at all costs, Yun Yang no longer liked this method. I'm not going to explain here. At this moment, a commotion came from the door. Then Ling Xiaozue who had gone out seemed to say something. Then the other party seemed to be relentless. Thus, an oppressive aura erupted abruptly. Ling Xiaozue had only said one sentence to the leading military officer through telepathy. The military officer was dumbstruck. Then Ling Xiaozue turned and walked back without another word. Behind him, a few people wanted to rush forward to apprehend the wanted criminal, but the leading military officer suddenly charged forward like a madman, slapping the few fellows to the ground and issuing a series of orders. Retreat. Retreat. Retreat quickly. Quick. Retreat. You're still shouting, I'll let you shout, I'll let you shout, I'll let you shout. As he spoke, he whipped his assistant half to death as if he had gone mad. When the entire army retreated, This officer took the lead as if there were a mountain full of tigers chasing after him. He almost pissed his pants and ran back. It was said that the military officer was still terrified when he returned to the fourth prince's residence. Sweat poured uncontrollably from his forehead. The group of people who had left valiantly and returned in a daze were, of course, confused and dissatisfied. Only this military officer was pale, refusing to say a word, until he saw the fourth prince himself. "Where's the seven-scaled fairy that I asked you to retrieve?" What? The fourth prince's expression was filled with surprise. Everyone's gaze fell on the military officer, their meaning clear. "Ask him. How would we know what's going on?" The officer was still trembling uncontrollably from head to toe. He moved closer to the fourth prince and whispered something into his ear. His voice was so soft that no one could hear what he had said. Then, everyone saw that the fourth prince, who had initially been flushed with pride and looked like he was about to rule the world, actually fell to the ground after hearing the words. His face, which was originally red, instantly turned pale. His eyes were filled with fear. Even his hands and feet were trembling, and his body was shaking like a leaf. The middle-aged man, who was the fourth prince's uncle, came forward to complain, "Your Highness, what's going on? This seven-scaled fairy is related to..." "Related my asterisk." The fourth prince suddenly exploded. He jumped up and gave his uncle a good beating. "Do you know how much trouble you've caused this time? I'm dead because of you." After a long time, the fourth prince let go of his uncle, who had been beaten to a bloody pulp by him, and muttered in a daze, "Now, what should I do?" He had completely lost his mind. Thinking of how he had labeled Ling Xiaozui as a fugitive and had even sent men to capture him, the fourth prince felt as if the sky had darkened. How could he have done such a ridiculous thing? Ling Xiaozui was a fugitive? If word of this got out, his reputation as a prince would be forever tarnished. He would forever be the laughingstock of the world. "Your Highness." The leading general took a step forward and said in a low voice, "For now, this apology is a must. Otherwise, there will be no end of trouble." The fourth prince looked panicked as he said weakly, "What should we do?" Before Dong Qianling and the rest could drink a cup of tea, they saw the fugitive return from the door. "Settled?" Yin Yang asked, his tone casual. The other party was only the fourth prince's 500 imperial guards. What trouble could such a small number cause to Ling Xiaozui? Therefore he was not worried at all. "Settled." Ling Xiaozui was indifferent as well. There was a hint of helplessness and exasperation between his brows. This was the first time he had come across such a ridiculous situation. "Have some tea, please." Yun Yang chuckled. "It's a rare gathering with Brother Ling. I don't know if today's encounter can be repeated in the future. We must enjoy ourselves these few days." The four great clans, no matter where they were placed, were existences that could play a decisive role. Let's see if you're shocked or not. Now that you know it's us, what are you waiting for? Ling Xiaozui looked around in confusion and said, "Spring, summer, autumn, and winter? Indeed, I've never heard of him. He's a nameless nobody, but he lives up to his name." The four young masters could only feel a surge of resentment rising from the bottom of their hearts. Ling Xiaozui continued, "However, I can still remember a few old acquaintances who are related to the surnames of Spring, Summer, Autumn, and Winter. Spring Waters, Xia Jianghai, Chiu Kai Tian, Dong Hanyue. These people happen to be of the same clan as you. Do you know them?" The four young masters' faces twitched. "Do you know them?" Honestly, the four young masters really did not know them. However, these four names were the old forefathers of the four noble families who were still alive. Their reputations were well known, but they had only heard of them and had no chance to see them in person. Yun Yang smiled and said faintly, "Brother Ling, don't scare them." Ling Xiaozui said faintly, "They're very bold. Even if the four old acquaintances I've mentioned were together, they wouldn't dare to talk to me like they did just now." Dong Qianling felt his scalp tingle as he said, Then, may I ask, Senior?" Ling Xiaozui swirled the teacup in his hand lightly and said faintly, "I'll repeat myself. I've really never heard of the four of your names. However, I'm Ling Xiaozui. Have you heard of me?" Ling Xiaozui looked at Dong Qianling alone. "This, sir? Have you heard of me?" Yun Yang and Ling Xiaozui continued to drink tea facing each other, chatting merrily. The atmosphere was extremely harmonious. The four noble young masters looked as if they had lost their parents, standing at the side obediently as they served tea and poured water. Their faces were pale. They had really met a ghost when they went out today. Ling Xiaozui. This fellow was the unrivaled expert Ling Xiaozui. Their boss had warned them just now and had even pleaded on their behalf, but they had still offended him in the end. They had brought this upon themselves. Recalling how he had asked Ling Xiaozui with his neck raised, "My name is Dong Qianling. Have you heard of my name?" Dong Qianling felt his sweat dripping uncontrollably, wanting to beat himself to death. Embarrassing? There was no such thing as embarrassing. Offending someone? There was no such thing as offending someone. The moment they heard Ling Xiaozui's name, the four noble young masters were collectively dumbfounded. They did not even realize that the teacup in their hands had fallen to the ground. Each of them had their mouths agape as they stared dumbly at the little old man who was still pretending to be innocent at his age, feeling as if the sky had fallen on them. Ling Xiaozui had even said, "I really didn't know that the four noble families of spring, summer, autumn and winter would have such outstanding young talents after so many years. Their courage is commendable. I must pay them a visit in a few days' time, lest we offend the four noble families and disaster befalls us." The four noble young masters felt their hearts turn cold after listening to his words. If their families knew that they had offended Ling Xiaozui on behalf of their families, if Ling Xiaozui came knocking on their doors, this was truly an imminent disaster and it was unavoidable. The family leader would probably come out personally to capture them and leave them to dry in the wind, hoping that they would be lucky enough not to implicate the family. The four of them were like four obedient kittens, standing respectfully as they served the young master. Each of them had a teapot in hand, pouring tea and refilling water, afraid that they would fall behind. They were extremely attentive. "Brother Ling, forget it." Yunyang tried to smooth things over. "These are my young brothers. They're young and full of vigor. Who hasn't been reckless in their youth? Besides, it's not a crime to be ignorant." Ling Xiaozui said faintly, "I don't blame them. It's just that it wasn't easy for those old friends of mine to make a name for themselves. It's been an arduous task for them to build up their family to where they are now after a lifetime of hard work. Popinjays like them will one day bring real disaster upon themselves. This reminder is still necessary. I'm doing this out of kindness." He smiled faintly. At the end of the day, spring, summer, autumn, and winter also had a past with me. The four of them looked even more ashen. It seemed that Ling Xiaozui and the four old forefathers were more than just old acquaintances. Were they old friends or even old friends? Yunyang said, "How about this? Brother Ling, you're a man of leisure. You don't have to worry about this. When I'm free, I'll make the trip on your behalf and it'll be over." Ling Xiaozui hesitated and said, The four of them felt their hearts skip a beat as they looked at Yunyang expectantly. "Save us, big brother, take it as giving this young brother some face?" Yunyang smiled calmly. "Look at you, I've taken care of your food, lodging, and entertainment when you come here. You should at least be able to ask for this from brother Ling." Ling Xiaozui snorted and said, "Forget it." Yunyang's expression darkened as he turned to face the four of them. "Aren't you going to serve tea and apologize?" As the four of them were about to step forward, they heard Ling Xiaozui say, "This old man isn't so narrow-minded. What's there to apologize for? Now that we've had our fill, coming to Tiantang this time and getting to know this young brother is truly a fortuitous encounter in life. I still have matters to attend to, so it's inconvenient for me to stay here any longer. I bid you farewell now. We shall meet again in the martial world." Without waiting for Yunyang to speak, Ling Xiaozui's motionless silhouette vanished completely with a gust of wind. There was no trace of him left. He had vanished without a trace. Even when Ling Xiaozui's silhouette had vanished, the four noble young masters still looked humble and respectful, as if they were looking at a great mountain. After a long time, Chun Wanfeng of the four noble young masters was the first to fall to the ground. Like a domino effect, the other three young masters followed suit. All four of them were drenched in cold sweat, their faces pale. It was not that they did not want to hold on, but their legs were as limp as noodles. The four of them had similar physiques and similar cultivation base levels. Even the pressure they were under was the same. When the first one's legs could no longer take it, it was a natural chain reaction that affected the other three. "Mother," the four of them cried out in unison as they regained their clarity of mind. What had happened just now had frightened them to death. The world's first heaven medallion had been smashed by the four of them. They had brought trouble upon themselves and brought trouble upon themselves. They had dug their own graves. If it were not for their boss, they might have died here today. Even if Ling Xiaozui did not teach them a lesson right in front of their faces, as long as he expressed the slightest bit of dissatisfaction towards them and let their families know about it, the four of them would still be killed to apologize to the great legend Ling, to beg for forgiveness and mercy. Thinking of this, the four of them fixed their grateful gazes on Yunyang. each of them teary-eyed. "Boss, it's all thanks to you this time." Yun Yang rolled his eyes in annoyance and said, "Now you know what's good for you? Do you still dare to act so shamelessly in the future? Do you think you're so great? Do you think the four noble families are so strong? When you meet someone who's truly ruthless, what you can rely on is nothing." If it were not for today, the four noble young masters would have only scoffed at Yin Yang's lecture. At most, they would have agreed to it perfunctorily. Now, however, it was as if they had heard the morning bell, enlightened and enlightened. "No more, no more. How would we dare?" The four of them were ashen. Yun Yang looked at Dong Qianling and said teasingly, "This lord, do you still dare to call yourself lord in the future?" Dong Qianling's face was ashen as he shook his head like a rattledrum. Although the other three young masters were preoccupied, they could not help but burst out in laughter when they recalled Dong Qianling's insufferably arrogant manner just now and his words. Although the four of them had regained their clarity of mind, they were still in a state of shock even after a long time. Dong Qianling picked up his teacup to drink water to calm himself down and poured it directly on his face. Qiu Yunsan was the worst. He looked like his soul had left his body. His entire body was shaking non-stop and the muscles on his face were almost spasming. Rumor had it that Yun Zuyu was under Ling Xiaozui's protection. Now that Ling Xiaozui had come, he had truly appeared before his eyes. Recalling how he had once wanted to take Yun Zuyu as a concubine, Qiu Yunsan could only feel the darkness before his eyes. There was no light to speak of. "I've really been blinded by lard. I think you guys shouldn't be called the four noble young masters from now on. Call yourselves the four courting death." Yun Yang smacked his lips, suddenly feeling that this nickname suited these four fellows too well. Chapter 141. Seeing that these four fellows who were scared out of their wits would not be able to recover anytime soon, Yun Yang began to check on his gains from this trip to the 1,000-feet lake. He did not feel any special changes when the divine water essence entered his body. Perhaps when these four fellows leave, I'll try it in the water and know the benefits of this thing. After all, it was the essence of water and had its own foundation. The real benefits might not be immediate. It was dusk on this day. A few major events had happened in Tiantang City. A man in green appeared at the entrance of Sira's house as if he had appeared out of nowhere. Yun Zuyu seemed to have sensed it and rushed out to take a look. She could not help calling out in delight, "Brother Ling?" This cry silenced the entire Sira's house in an instant. Who was this person who could make Yun Zuyu call him Brother Ling? Was there even a need to ask? The universally acknowledged, unrivaled expert, a living legend, Ling Xiaozui. Yunger. Ling Xiaozui walked into Sira's house with a smile. His otherworldly aura made those who saw him lower their heads automatically. With a sweep of his gaze, a formless pressure overwhelmed the entire Tiantang city. Watching Yun Zuyu happily bring Ling Xiaozui upstairs, the people below began to whisper to each other. "Ling Xiaozui is here. He's really here. So the legend is true. Ling Xiaozui is really Landlord Yun's big brother. Oh my god. This must be the reinforcement Yun Zuyu has called for. Of course, if I were to be bullied like that, I'd call for help too. She's doing her business here, but she's being forced to marry and become a concubine. How can Yun Zuyu not think of a way to save herself? If I had such a backing, I would have moved out long ago. It's all good now. How did those people force Yun Zuyu back then? Now that her backing is here, there's a good show to watch. Retribution. This is the legendary retribution. Yes, it's not that the time hasn't come yet. Now that the time has come, it must be done. Maybe Ling Xiaozui has received the news and flown here to help. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made such a high-profile appearance. That makes sense. But since he has appeared in such a high-profile manner, then those who bullied Yun Zuyu back then will definitely be in trouble. Let's wait and see. I didn't expect to come to the Sira's house today. To be able to see the world's #1 expert, a legend of the world. Coming here today is so worth it. My heart is still pounding. Yi Zichen sighed. After more than an hour, when Yun Zuyu reappeared in the hall, the way everyone looked at her was different. If one were to say that they were condescending and covetous before, they were now filled with reverence and fawning. Ling Xiaozui had indeed been paying attention to this place. After a while, boom. A loud explosion shook everyone. A clear and melodious voice said in a clear voice, "The tiny myriad treasure tower actually dares to bully my sworn sister. I also don't know who gave you guys such an outrageous courage, stirring up trouble in front of me. What's the point of keeping this broken building? What's the point of destroying it? Tell the Myriad Treasure Tower, Lord, give me an explanation in the pugilistic world. From now on, the Myriad Treasure Tower is not allowed to exist in Tiantang City. The voice was neither fast nor slow, there was no hint of anger in it, but the sense of eeriness invaded everyone's heart at the same time. Indeed, this god had really come to stand up for Yun Zuiyu. The entire building where the Myriad Treasure Tower was originally located was actually split in the middle. Half of it was slanted to the left while the other half was slanted to the right. In the middle there was only a crack from top to bottom, from width to width. The top was about 2 feet wide and there was only a slit at the bottom. It was extremely smooth. Obviously this crack had been split open by a sword. Everyone in the 10,000 Treasure Tower was currently standing on the streets outside with pale faces. They were still shivering all over. A few of them were already drenched in sweat. They were working in the building and then the building split open. It was like a nightmare. Some of them were still in a trance, still thinking about the scene they had seen. Suddenly, a green silhouette flew up into the sky. Just as they were wondering what this fellow was doing, they saw a sword light that was like a waterfall, descending from the sky like the Milky Way. Then 2 people who were chatting face to face saw each other inexplicably move a foot away from them. Looking down, both of them were standing on the edge of the cliff that was cut by a knife. This feeling was simply a buzzing sound. The hairs on their heads stood up. It was too terrifying, too frightening. A moment later, the green silhouette descended above the imperial city and asked leisurely, "Where is Mi Kongquan?" In the palace, eunuch Mi was scared out of his wits, hiding in his room without making a sound. Although he had an extraordinary cultivation base, how could he dare go against the legend of this world? As a member of the Four Seasons Tower, he knew very well how terrifying Ling Xiaozui was. The Four Seasons Tower had long set an iron rule that one should never provoke Ling Xiaozui. If one were to violate the rule, death was death. The Four Seasons Tower would not make arrangements for one's funeral nor would it seek revenge. Mi Kongquan was praying in his heart, praying to the gods and Buddhas that he would hide in his room, hoping that Ling Xiaozui would be wary of Yutong's royalty and not threaten him with his life. However, with a loud boom, the walls of the room where Mi Kongquan was hiding disappeared while the roof above his head flew far away. It flew out for who knew how far, just like a huge umbrella. A clear voice spoke, "Keeper Mi is very cunning. Come, 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 eat my sword." Mi Kongquan fled like a flash of lightning, not even turning his head back as he cried out, "It's none of my business." Instead, he felt a piercing sword energy coming at him from behind. Mi Kongquan cried out, twisting his body with all his might and somersaulting into the air. Only then was he thankful that he had survived the legendary sword of the mortal world. However, he felt a chill on his shoulder as a transparent hole appeared at the icy spot. His mystical chi was frozen at once. With a cry he fell from the air. He landed face first on the ground, splashing flowers everywhere with a loud thud. "I'll spare your life this time." The clear voice in the air said, "Be careful of your wretched life if there's a next time." The silhouette in green floated up as the clear voice spoke slowly, "Your Majesty of Yutong, please do not be angry. Ling Xiaozui has no intention of going against the royalty this time. I only seek justice. Now that justice has been served, the grudge has been settled. I bid farewell here and wish the Empire of Yutong a prosperous future." The voice faded away. His Majesty's voice came again, "It's all right. Since Master Ling is here, why not come down and have a cup of tea? I shall disturb you if we are fated to. Take care, Your Majesty." Ling Xiaozui's voice was already far away. The next moment, a sudden clap of thunder shook the entire Tiantang city. Ling Xiaozui's voice rang from another direction. "He Han Qing." Then a loud explosion followed. What followed was a dazzling radiance and a series of densely packed collisions that sounded like a series of cannons. In the next moment, a cloud of black air soared into the sky and spread across the horizon. It seemed to grow in intensity, but the majestic sword light grew brighter and more intense. The black air gradually could not hold on any longer and crumbled. A moment later, the black air in the sky dissipated and the haze was gone. As for the boundless sword light, it was as if a layer of light had been embedded in the sky, illuminating the masses and the world. A long howl rang in the air. "He Han Qing, I'll spare your life considering that you're an old official of 3 dynasties and that you've been kind to the people in the past. However, you must know that the heavens are watching what you've done. There will naturally be someone to punish you for what you've done." An old voice spoke with indescribable agony, full of resentment. "Ling Xiaozui, you've relied on your martial prowess to bully this old man, an old man with 1 foot in the grave. What kind of hero are you? Did you, Ling Xiaozue, rely on this to make a name for yourself in the martial world? Is this how the legends of this world are written? Or are the legends of this world just a joke? In the air, a clear sneer rang out. He Hanqing, say it again if you have the guts. Do you dare or not? The voice was filled with an oppressive threat. There was no longer any sound from below. In the air, a long howl rang out. Don't say the martial world is far away. Who says the secular world is far away? Pour wine on the clouds and still get drunk. Not bad at all. The majestic sword light soared into the sky once again, reaching a height of 1,000 feet. With a loud bang, the clouds were dispersed by the sword light, forming a large hole. A ball of sword light charged straight into the hole and disappeared without a trace. The entire Tiantang city was silent. Extreme silence, extreme silence, extreme solemnity. It was suffocating. Even those who felt an itch in their throats and wanted to cough were holding it in with all their might. They were silent out of fear. No one dared to act rashly. Today they had finally witnessed the power of the world's unrivaled expert. No wonder it was said that the mystical dragon was far away from the secular world. Soaring 1,000 feet into the sky and disappearing into the clouds, it was an unbelievable feat. Was he still human? Perhaps he was already an immortal on Earth now. Why would such a human legend find trouble with old He? Whether it was in the imperial court or out in the world, old He was a righteous man with a great reputation. Of course he could actually compete with Ling Xiaozue. Although it was only for a moment, his cultivation base was unexpectedly sharp. Was there anyone in the empire of Yutong who could rival him? Could the two old marshals, Qiu Jianhan and Leng Daoyin, do this? Was the image of the black gas from old He? It did not seem to be a good thing. What Ling Xiaozue had said about man doing and heaven watching, as well as what he meant by unbearable, was unavoidably suspicious and thought-provoking. At the residence of He beneath the intense battle was a mess. All the houses and residences had collapsed. The owner of the residence of He, old He, was clutching his chest in agony as he sat in the mess, his face pale. He spat out a dozen mouthfuls of blood, his white beard dripping with blood. It was as if his spirit, chi and spirit had been sucked away in an instant. The wrinkles on his face had deepened. There was only a sword mark on his chest, but it was a mark that did not even cut through his flesh. However, He Hanqing knew that the severity of this sword wound would not heal without at least 10 years. Within these 10 years he could no longer use high-level mystical chi. Chapter 142. The first thing is, of course, thanks. Thanks to Sea Soul Robe, Bear Child, Wu Hui, Original Heart, Chicky, Lute Emperor family, and the other alliance leaders for their support. Thanks to the brothers who are able to persist in subscribing. Thanks to the brothers and sisters who have been recommending the book. Thanks to the hard work of the managers. On the 1st of August I was very happy. At the gathering of my comrades, the old captain did not allow me to drink and forced me to come back and explode. Cough, he even wanted to beat me up while holding a glass of wine. The second thing is the monthly rankings. Everyone wants to fight for it. All along, the Feng family has been fighting in the pugilistic world for many years. I have always insisted on one thing. In the book group, review section and other places that belong to the book, it is not allowed to mention or insult any author or any book. Respecting all opponents is respecting yourself. Everyone should do their own thing. I repeat, all the disciples of the Feng family stick to our formation. We can be happy, play and read books. However, those who come to make trouble, we will not tolerate them. Those who come to sow discord, we will not tolerate them. Our results are still passable. At the very least, it is much better than Ao Shirxiejun's start. However, there are still many books that are stronger than us. To be strong, there must be a reason to be strong and they must pay a lot. I envy and respect the existence of the strong. I will not be jealous and slander them. There are many books that are stronger than us, and I will treat these books and these people as my goals. I will learn, respect the strengths of others and move forward step by step towards my goal. That is all. War, of course we will fight. Retreat is also impossible. When the Feng family starts a war, we never retreat halfway. This is what I have always insisted on. The third thing, someone joined the group to insult the manager. The insults were very harsh. The manager is a girl and she cried after being scolded. I cannot stand this kind of thing. Management is the most precious wealth of an author, and also the most precious foundation of an author. After many years of hard work and accumulation, there is such a group of brothers and sisters following them. The manager of the book group does not have any salary and does not have any income. They are completely free to help the author deal with matters. No day, no night, no day, no night. I can proudly say that the Feng family has a lot of managers. The management team of the Feng family is very cohesive. Any author, any god to have such a management team is something to be proud of. It is also the dream of any author. So I cherish it. If the person who comes to scold me is a reader, I can only say that you are brainless. If the person who came to scold was the author, then I can tell you clearly, a person like you is not worthy of making a living in this line of work. 9,000 words were released at the 3rd chapter today. Not too much, not too little. I'm begging for monthly votes and recommendation votes. I hope everyone can understand and support me. Thank you that you're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.